Well, I hope everyone has, or some people have at least come into the Hopin platform now. So yeah, it'd be good to know in the chat if people have started to come into this event. Yeah, so yeah, feel free to ask some questions. But yeah, let's get this this event underway. So good afternoon, audience members. Welcome to Cambridge 2020. Experience design is the new frontier for digital marketing. My name is Rupert, and I'll be your table mediator for this afternoon's debate. My role outside of facilitating these interesting discussions within tech communities is as a talent partner, where I guide, build, and support hiring processes within companies who are scaling up fast, their digital teams and departments. This afternoon, we have with us an exciting roundtable of speakers from different sectors, representing e-commerce, travel tech, social media, and life science. Through this roundtable debate, we will be learning together how experience design sits within all these sectors and interconnects through the common theme of personalization of the customer or user journey. For those who are very new to the area of experience design, Wikipedia defines it as the process of supporting user behavior through usability, usefulness, and desirability provided in the interaction with a product. Before COVID-19, this event would have been a live face-to-face event in Cambridge, celebrating the global influence this UK city now has across a lot of digital sectors, from big data and gaming to life science, the sector of our primary sponsor for today's event, ABCAM. However, here we are in an online web conference in a meeting platform called Hopin that was built and funded as a result of the situation that we now find ourselves in today in our work. Some of us sitting only meters away from our partners, husbands, pets, or sometimes noisy neighbors if you're unfortunate. Today, we meet in a digital cloud platform, which could be said to be the next best thing to a live event. Well, let's see how it goes anyway. The COVID-19 crisis has drastically changed the landscape of e-commerce. McKinsey report recently reported the sector as having jumped forward 10 years in a 90-day period, referring to this monumental shift as the quickening. There are clear parallels with the 2008 financial crisis, where this event gave rise to the rapid growth of e-commerce companies such as Alibaba. Before we begin and we meet Tiago on the main stage, can I offer some guidance in using this platform and for what will happen this afternoon? We will begin this main stage event led by each of our roundtable speakers. Audience members will be able to ask questions to the main stage. There will be 3 main stage events led by each of our roundtable speakers. Audience members will be asked questions to the main stage, leading speakers through the messaging on the right-hand side of the dashboard. So our leading speakers will endeavour to answer as many of these questions as possible. There will be a live poll during the main stage events, also on the right of your dashboard. We will refer to the results of this poll during the main stage events. So yeah, I would like to now introduce Tiago to the main stage. Tiago has held senior product positions at Booking.com, Expedia, Hotels.com, Airsorted, TaskRabbit, and now has his own startup called Roundabouter, a geospatial proximity-first media platform. So it'd be fair to say Tiago knows a thing or two about product, travel tech, and e-commerce. Tiago, to make it through the pandemic, businesses are embracing digitization more than ever before across all industries. Increasing numbers of companies are having to adopt video conferencing tools like this Hopin and project management platforms to provide their employees with remote work options. Grocery stores, as we're all aware, are seeing more downloads of their grocery delivery apps, and more universities are offering virtual learning models. Tiago, how do you see e-commerce companies and brands at this time? What's happening in this space right now? And how might the travel sector, somewhere that you're quite used to working, survive from this current crisis?
Yep. Thank you for introduction, Robert, and welcome everybody. Some of the few key trends that I see in e-commerce, particularly in travel, but also across all kinds of retail, are a pressing need for meaningful personalization. Personalization is something we have heard about for a long time. We have seen it. It's particularly visible on platforms like Spotify, Netflix, where they call it out as things that are recommended to you. But the need, since things have become more difficult, more constrained across the board, the need to just shop more efficiently is there, and personalization is something that helps that goal. Also, we see a trend that customers understand personalization a bit more than they used to, especially as it happens online, because of Facebook is everywhere, and it has such algorithms. Everybody now has at least YouTube and Netflix, and they know more or less how these things work, and they have a level of expectation related to that. Another trend is seeing business struggling that we wouldn't think they would struggle with that. So everybody, even the big guys, Expedia, Facebook, they can struggle with personalization because the more complex the business, the more difficult it can be to just sync up your data, make sure data is valid, make sure your data is relevant. So just the tasks around polishing your data up can be extremely complex. And small business, as part of that trend, have an opportunity to delight, including using techniques that are age-old in the industry. If you guys think about it, if you allow me a parenthesis, one way that Gap will personalize your experience that's very simple is they will have their sellers remember certain people and what they bought, so they can ask them, how did that pair of pants work for you? So that there's no tech involved in that. And techniques like that are now surfacing in small business as well. Another trend that I see is the ubiquity of hacky solutions. So things like QR codes, apps that these grocery shops are building by themselves sometimes, because there's a lot of more off-the-shelf app building packages out there. G Suite, for those of you who use the Google service, has a spreadsheet-based app creation platform. So people who wouldn't mess with this kind of stuff before are now trying their hand at creating things that are a bit more professional. So I would say that another key trend is everybody professionalizing themselves a little bit. So everybody's using Zoom, everybody's creating their stores with Wix, everybody's creating their apps with Google Suite, and so on and so forth. People who weren't looking at Salesforce are now looking at Salesforce. People are getting deeper into MailChimp and a lot of tools that were a bit specialized a year ago, not that much anymore. They're now going for a much wider audience. And I think, so to recap, my key trends is a pressing need for personalization because things got more difficult out there. So we need more efficiency, a more savvy customer base that understands and has expectations around personalization, and also creative solutions being available to everybody.
Okay. So I've got a question for you, Tiago. This bar raising in website personalization being so important for, well, every user-focused company right now, from startups to larger scale enterprises. What challenges will it provide us, both the small scale companies and the largest companies going forwards?
Yeah. Let me before I talk about how we raise the bar, let's try to have a look at what a quality of personalization is. What is bad personalization? What is over personalization? So I'll do a quick exercise. People can reply. I didn't prepare a poll for this. I just thought of that. But suppose you have a little problem. You have a new algorithm that personalizes search results to make it just perfect for a particular user that comes to your online shop. You put a lot of work into that, and you have three variables. You have the price of the product, the style of the product, and say the user review score of the product with different weights that you can tweak to provide a new set of search results. You test that. You put a new tab there that says automatic source, and you present that, and you show that to your customers, and nobody cares. It goes really bad. People who click, it doesn't sell. A quick question: what would you change for your next iteration of that? So let me ask that around the table, and people can comment as well.
Great, great. So yeah, I mean, thank you very much for that. I just need to remind the audience that there will be polls. There's some surveys going on, so please go to those, and some of them will be related to the different people as we're moving forwards. Obviously, Tiago will try his best to answer some of your questions as well.
Absolutely. This one, I would give the spoiler. It's a trick question if I had the answer in a poll. So let me see what do you guys think.
Okay, well there we go then. So that's open to the audience to respond to.
We can go back to that later. Yeah. But think about it. Your algorithm-driven sort is going bad. You have three variables there. You can tweak which one do you pick. If you don't remember, make one up.
Well, maybe you could write that question quickly in the chat for the audience.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
They'll be able to remember it. Okay, great. So does anyone else have any questions? Izzy, do you have a question here for, I know you do, for Tiago?
Yeah. My question is really related to being able to understand the user behavior, because to me, understanding how and what has changed will really help us do that personalization much better. But now users are changing. They're not just changing their habits, but also they're traveling. They're moving from where they used to be in the environment and actually moving out to some completely different environment. And so I wanted to hear, what do you think are the key changes that has happened with consumer behavior? And how far do you think we need to go now and get users as they've moved away from where we used to find them?
Yep. I think the key things that have changed is people are shopping online for things that they perhaps didn't before out of necessity. So out of the necessity created by the pandemic, people are not being able to go and browse certain things in person, and shops are closed and so on. So they are shopping online and through new channels out of necessity. Another one, as you mentioned, the types of things they're buying has changed. So the realities have changed. They're now working from home. They are perhaps in a location they were used to being, for instance, their home neighborhood rather than their office's neighborhood where they shopped for particular things. So the makeup of things they are buying due to this new reality is changing completely. And I think the other behavior is customers being a bit more choosy about how they're going to spend their money because of a mix of being more savvy, being more tech savvy than they used to be, and being a bit more careful with their money in terms of uncertainty. So I think those are some of the key changes: where they shop because of necessity, what they are shopping for because of the changing environment around them, and the third one. Now I forgot the third one. The third one was their level of pickiness and fussiness about what they're going to buy, just because it's a combination of not having money and becoming a bit more savvy and demanding about what they're actually going to buy.
Great. Thanks for that, Tiago. And have we got another question to Izzy that you wanted to ask?
I wanted to follow up with something that's really interesting to me, which is conversion rate and average order value. Depending on which e-commerce business you are and what your business is focusing on with KPIs, it could be either or. But as things are shifting, is one of them more important than others? Should we be focusing on one and instead of kind of trying to spread too thin and not being able to achieve anything at all?
So the question is versus average order value versus a conversion. Yeah, correct. Conversion for anybody who's watching who doesn't know what those things are. Conversion is the number of people that come to a particular experience, be it a shop or a web page, and convert into customers. So they make a purchase, in other words. Average order value is what it says in the tin. So all the orders that this person has made and the average of that. So how much money they tend to spend. So what is more important, to get more customers or to make sure whoever's spending money is spending as much as that person can possibly spend? I think in the way things are in retail, conversion is pretty much king. We're going to get into a discussion on whether that is valid or not. And we need to protect that also because it's a form of engagement in retail. Somebody made a purchase. But if you're running a retail operation, be it a shop or a commerce website, you should always combine those in the same figure. So in my career, working for Expedia and Booking.com, the larger OTAs, we always made our experiments about uplift, which was a measure of revenue that combined those factors. So we would take into account both the conversion plus the average order value, without getting into the lifetime of the customers in what they might spend down the road. That combination, which we called an uplift, revenue uplift, was the measure that we used in the end. Always keeping an eye on conversion to protect that from excessive drops, even if the average order value might go up. And also to make sure customers are engaged. To give you an example, just to say, because I think we're going to talk about this a little more. One example where you see a bad experience surviving on travel websites, because it increases average order value among other things and conversion, but it creates a bad experience for users, is the urgency messages. So those messages that tell you that this price is only for 5 more minutes, or we have only 3 left in stocks and 10 people looking at this. These are messages that when you try to test them out, it will hurt your conversion, will hurt your AOV. They're not a great experience, but they survive because of that. So it's always you have to keep an eye on all these moving parts, but trying to protect your user experience so you don't get suddenly disrupted down the road by somebody who just comes out with a much better experience.
I mean, you mentioned that conversion is a strong measure of engagement, and with that, I really agree. And to keep that engagement going, we really want to keep bringing customers in, and of course, to get them more and more interested. And recently, I've been thinking a lot what loyalty then means in terms of that, and can we marry loyalty with engagement, and how can we benefit, how loyalty can benefit from conversion as well. Do you think loyalty will become much more predominant in this new kind of struggle to keep people engaged with products?
Yeah, absolutely. And loyalty is becoming an ever more difficult game. So to convert customers from being just customers who converted or almost converted or just visited your shop into members of your loyalty program, hopefully loyal customers once they make a purchase. It's all about contextually trying to bring them back in, alert them contextually about things that might be of their interest. Trying to not spam them, because once you become spam, you might become invisible. We all know the feeling of ad blindness. We all have all kinds of ads that we just don't see on the page. Everybody has that, so you don't want to be filed in their brains as spam, and you want to be relevant. And I say this game is becoming ever more difficult because we saw a time in which suddenly we started to have to do SEO for Google, which is originally Google's job, like to find things, and now we have to kind of like be visible, and that's because suddenly there were so many websites that you need to stand out. Every platform goes through that process, and now, as Rupert mentioned, grocery shops have their apps, or we have seen that in our list of friends on Facebook. Once you get to 1,000 friends, if you don't remember somebody's name because you knew them by their nickname, how do you pull up their profile? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like suddenly just having an app or being in that particular network is not enough. People need to remember you. You need to be something we haven't heard in a while, but we're going to hear again. But the word was top of mind. We have to be top of mind again. Yeah.
That's a nice reminder for top of mind. Yes, thank you.
Tiago, I thought it was really interesting you talking about scarcity working. I worked at Qubit, who ran tests across a huge number of different retailers, and they published a meta-analysis, and scarcity was one of, out of 6,700 tests, when you combine them, scarcity really works. It was one of the top 3 things there. It's a really interesting report. I'll send it into the chat in the stage. The other things that work, so scarcity, social proof, and urgency. So with what you were talking about, you're combining the scarcity and urgency. So yeah, no wonder that was successful there.
Yeah. And these sites are plastered in the urgency and scarcity messaging to this day. They don't do as much social proofing because it's harder. So at that point, you have to connect to external sources and all that. But the pressure is on them to start leveraging that as well. Airbnb has a little bit of it. It will show you friends who stayed at a place, and those things test really well.
Tiago, can I ask another question, which is, and Airbnb is probably a good example of this, and I'm sure you got experiences from Booking.com. But to what extent does this vary depending on the country a person is from? So do we have different expectations about the level of personalization, the way our data is treated in different places?
I haven't seen difference. There are certainly cultural differences around what people are willing to share and what people are comfortable with seeing about their friends' lives, or what kind of website they want to see their friends' faces plastered on, and so on. But apart from that, once you find what is it that you can leverage in terms of data, I think from what I've seen in tests, it plays out fairly similarly. It's just the makeup of what data points you're going to use that might change, because in a certain country, it might be that people don't want to be all up in their friends' businesses, like regarding where they stayed. But people in Latino countries have a problem with that, because I don't know, they don't want people to know which hotel they stayed in and stuff like that. So they can be private about that stuff. So they might not opt in, which like doesn't give you the data.
Yep.
So I think, yeah, the main difference is like which data points people are okay with sharing, and with data points people are not. I feel that, for instance, Brazilians, I'm Brazilian. I don't have data on that, but they seem a lot more open to sharing their Instagram with work colleagues. People might be exchanging Instagrams with you in your first week of work. Whereas in London, it was more like a departing thing. When you're leaving the company, it's like, oh, let's stay in touch on Instagram. Now you make that switch. So I think it's more what data, let's call it all data points, people are willing to share or not.
Yeah,
difference.
Slight tangent. I was working at Facebook, and one of the first things that happens there is you get added on Facebook by your boss. Before you even actually start on the team. And of course, everyone's sharing each other's Instagrams. It works quite well when it works like that. I've got used to not really separating too much. They've got a big policy in bring your authentic self to work, so not trying to pretend to be someone different. Which I think is actually quite how I think a lot of people would want things to be more.
Absolutely. Do you have any further questions, Ted, or shall we move on to another member of the table?
Also interested in so again, being at Facebook, then one of the criticisms has always been the feeling that it's uncanny, the personalization that people are getting. Now, there are a number of reasons for that. So in particular, when people are getting an advert for something they've just spoken about, people think that Facebook's listening. Now, it absolutely is not the case, because physically it would be impossible for them to handle all the data, be sending all the information across all the time from mobile phone. There's a number of reasons why that actually happens that I think are quite interesting. So like partly that people recall it. So if, let's say that you've been seeing that ad 5 times already, and then someone mentions it, and then you start to see it, you start to actually notice it. The other thing is it can run the other way around. So let's say you've had an ad that's been out there, and then that causes you to talk about it, and then you start to notice it. I think when people see it on the side of a bus, so let's say it's advertising Israel for a holiday destination. Now, you'll start to notice those adverts now. And that doesn't mean that the bus company is listening to this hop-in conversation and have put it up there because of that.
Cognitive bias.
Yeah, so it's that effect where you start to notice things that have been mentioned as well. But my main question there was about the kind of uncanny feelings from personalization and how you go about reassuring people.
Thank you for that, because that's a good way for me to answer also my trick question from the beginning. I think things get uncanny when people don't understand what personalization is doing. The most successful algorithm that there is the Amazon's. It says right there in the headline of what the algorithm is. Customers who bought this also bought. So people know what they're looking at, why they're looking at that, and why Amazon, the algorithm, whoever thinks it makes sense to them. So they can use that information. If you don't know what's happening, you're left to speculate. So to tie in to my question, which variable do you change? I would change none of them. I would change the label from automatic sorts to magic sort, your recommendations, something that tells them what that is. And then you think about improving their algorithm, which probably fine work and can be tweaked along the way. But we really need to make sure that people know what this is, what they should expect when they click on that tab, and how that can help them. So I think, yeah, that's where uncanny happens. On social networks like Facebook or even YouTube, we get that feeling a lot because we're not the real customers, right? We're users. So if you look at the advertiser side, their personalization tools are a lot clearer because they are, they're converting there and spending money on ads. So they will have a lot more understanding of how they are tweaking their tools. For the people who are using the website, we're there to create content. What we want from them is content or something like that. So they're making up the population of the platform and all that. They don't get as much love in terms of clarity, and so things often look uncanny, and they might not be so efficient, which is why you might go to YouTube. Now users are like, we know to open YouTube in an incognito window. We don't want to get our algorithms dirty. My mom does that these days. I just want to look this up. I don't want it all over my homepage. People have learned those tricks, and it's working because from the perspective of Facebook or Google, they have a lot of things to implement. They're like, okay, people are coping. They know how to not get their algorithms dirty, and so on. So we're not seeing a lot of. We see personalization goes bad when it's personalization that's not applied to your paid customer, basically, I think. That's when things can get a bit uncanny.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so does anyone else have a question to come in here?
Yeah, that whole uncanny experience is so interesting because it's so much to do with like how your brain processes information rather than what actually is happening. And often, it's considered a negative experience. Well, I mean, that's how I would kind of presume that most people kind of take it. How could you kind of take that sort of probably slightly negative experience and kind of make it into a more delightful experience or kind of a bit more positive and like take that opportunity as something different than what it currently is seen as?
I think I don't know, Ted. Do you have since you worked at Facebook? How have you guys dealt with that?
I think
it's very social media though better.
The news cycle's really turned against Facebook. So when I started out there, it was much more positive. It was seen as helping the Arab Spring and helping democracy. And by the time I finished up there, then it was being accused of destroying everything and creating all sorts of social harms and polarization. I think that there is just a general familiarity problem with people, like you mentioned, Tiago, that once people understand it and are okay with their data being used in that way, then I think that they've got a little bit more consent in the process, and it becomes a little less uncanny. So, for instance, you might, rather than thinking that Facebook is tracking you across the entire website, if you just understand how tracking pixels work, then you see that as being a little more not as directed at you. It's just part of the way the internet functions, and it's not Facebook doing that. It's an external provider. They probably got information about you. They are sharing that. But the problem is just the media cycle and being able to convince people. I also think that I'm not a big fan of a lot of the Gdpr legislation. I think it's pretty badly constructed. That's a personal view, of course. One of the problems with it is that it creates this people's attachment to data, thinking that they own their data as it is actually a thing. And I just think that this is just a social construct, this kind of rule and this kind of perception. I personally don't mind that my information, I'm even using the term my information about how I as an individual have interacted, being used. I think if used right, then it will still benefit me. One of the things that I like less is the lack of clarity about how information is being used. And that isn't necessarily personal information being used. But now when you're using Kayak or I think maybe Booking might be another one that's doing this, when you're going there and it's saying, our search results will be sorted in order that gives us profitability. Like, well, clearly that isn't in my best interest for you to have done that. I would rather find the one that's priced too low, that is 30% cheaper than it should be, where you're making no profit. That's actually the best one for me.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, Namisha, do you have any more questions from your side?
Yeah, so Tiago, you've talked quite a lot about kind of the B2C experience, and I know that that's where your background is. But what would you do differently, or where would you put your focus in for the B2B area, especially since COVID?
I think in B2B, I think the first thing is for medium businesses. I think larger business might be already better tooled for this. But if you're a small, medium business, do not delay becoming familiar with the tools because B2B customers, it's a closer relationship. You get to experiment on them, hear directly from them what their feedback is. You get to be in touch with them every day if you have that kind of relationship. However, the level of expectation is also higher. So I think at this time, to make it short and sweet, and if this business have to remember something, I would just say, do not wait to get onto enterprise tools. So get your Salesforce right, get your Zendesk right from the beginning. Do not create a millennium bugs for yourself. They're going to be hard to create when you become bigger, if you become bigger. Okay. But yeah, just keep up in terms of technology, because now it's important and relevant for B2B as well.
That's really interesting. Obviously, different technologies will give different abilities. And you mentioned Salesforce, but we've got things like MailChimp, HubSpot. So would you still think that larger companies can work with these kind of smaller enterprise tools? Or do you think there's a progression that we should go through when deciding to use these for personalization?
I think larger companies that might perhaps be so large that they tend to have these things built in-house and built specifically for their use cases should also look at these tools, because also these companies can probably be broken up organizationally in a lot of different fronts and pods and areas. And I think all of these areas currently in a world that's changing rapidly, they would do well to be very agile and to operate like internal startups. We hear that a lot out there. It's picking up traction, internal startups and things like that. So do behave like that. Do leverage tools that empower the user, the business user, and don't wait for the organization to implement, a big internal in-house thing for you to get your personalization in your business right.
Sure, thanks for that, Tiago. And I'm just going to the poll here, and I noticed that at the moment, winning on the what are your team company's biggest obstacles to increasing your website personalization efforts is a resource, basically a lack of expertise there. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. I think internal buy-in, the other options are like these things are there. And over personalization is a problem that is tackled by people with expertise. I think it is the lack of expertise, because it's not one job, right? The one job that you'll see out there is a product manager of personalization. This person's job is to coordinate a lot of people, in a personalization effort. So there is no there's no personalizationalist. It's not really one job. At best, it's a program, and it's a complex thing, because it really involves all parts of the organization, and it can be done in many different ways. You cannot just hire a product manager who's going to work with a data scientist who will create some kind of magic sort that is going to work. You have to understand the context of the user, different points of the journey, and personalize at every opportunity where relevant. So that's going to involve a certain level of expertise and education on that topic, on the various topics of personalization across everyone in any company of any size, and have some people also dedicated to that program full time.
Great. And running on from that, of that question, I've got something in the poll here. What motivates your team companies drive towards website personalization? And we've got a few different responses, but it looks like increased engagement rates are winning there. But would you agree with that? Is it not retention now that companies need to in this crisis?
I think personalization can be leveraged for any of those reasons, including conversion. It's usually applied first for conversion in retail. So things like, hey, you bought this before, do you want to buy it again? Type of thing. Personalization can be applied to to improve any of those metrics, whether you should be picking engagement over retention. These are metrics that play off of each other a lot. So I think if you're, it will vary per business, depending on what business it is, even in what industry you are. One might be more important than the other, but I would just say pick one, what makes sense for you, and start thinking of what personalization programs can improve that. Some examples of how, one example of where retention might be more important than engagement. In retail, in the world of e-commerce, so again, Tad might do stop me if you and I'll hand over to you because I think it's more the world of social. But I would imagine, say, retention is more about people coming back regularly to your site, and say engagement, they came on the same day in that same session, they stayed a long time. So see what makes sense for your business. Do you want them to spend a long time when they come to your business, or do you want them to come back often? And then once you have that understanding of how you want your customers to behave, where do you want to move them, then you start thinking up your personalization experiments. But Ted, I will defer to you on that stuff.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about this later in my section as well, because I'll be talking about data and how that interacts. The broad thing here is you need to make sure that it ties back up to the thing that you really want to drive. So if you are a B2B company and you're just getting people back onto your site for the sake of it to increase engagement, that's just going to be creating a negative experience in many cases. I'd make sure that whatever metric you've got, it ties back to what you really want to achieve.
Okay. And I got a question here from Jen Hennings. I don't know if you guys can see that in the chat. Can anyone kind of elaborate on that or answer Jen's question there? It's more of I think it's more of an assertion than a question, but it'd be good for someone to maybe comment on it.
So I'm just going to read it out loud. B2B buyers will have a higher set of expectations on relationships with businesses, but also will have lower tolerance level. They're pretty universally time poor and are having their expectations set by B2C experiences. I agree. Like this is one thing. Jen touched on something really important there, which is expectations. Once they see like Tinder's interface, I don't know, it's nice to swipe left and right and all that. They will recognize experiences in their flow where, why don't I have something like that? They will think about that. Why can't I do it like I do it on Netflix or something? So yeah, these are not isolated words. Every B2B customer is also a private person, and they are seeing what's out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And quickly, we've got 2 minutes left of your stage. Could you answer Andy Quedo's question just below Jen Hennings? If you can. Yeah.
Could you please touch on ad hoc reactive solutions? A recent example could be pandemic, higher online delays, shortages, etc. A lot of us probably experience solutions like virtual queues. I'd love to get an opinion on how such temporary solutions impact brand perception. Would you measure, give me time constraints? What I would just quickly on that one, I would say build a repertoire of things and components that you can use to whip up quick products. So get into the agile world of quick experimentation. So learn some tools. Maybe it's just Google Forms. Maybe it's just Wix. Maybe it's I don't know, Facebook pages or Facebook chat field. Learn some tools and components that you can use to whip up quick to just create quick solutions to address problems that are appearing out of nowhere. So the virtual queues is something that suddenly people just couldn't come and queue, and those implemented solutions, hardware thingies are too expensive and they don't have the money right now. So somebody figured out how to make it with, I don't know, a spreadsheet on Google Docs or something like that. So have a little repertoire for you to start fast testing things.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Tiago. And actually, you've got a few, maybe a minute left. No, you haven't. There we go. We're on 2:40. So thank you so much, Tiago, and we'll see you later. We'll be really excited to hear your take on the future technologies. But let's now go over to our next main stage event. And yeah, I mean, it's great that we have Tiago leading onto this next topic anyway. So yeah, let's introduce Izzy. Welcome, Isabel Raffi, to the main stage. Izzy is currently Global Digital Product Lead at Pizza Hut Digital Ventures, and before that has held senior positions at Just Eat and John Lewis. So again, some great experience, and it would be great to hear from you.
Hi, everyone, and so excited to see such a exciting audience. We're already asking questions, but then Tiago is such a great opener, right? Like, he got everyone excited. So I would really like to echo some of his thinking as well, but through the lens of product, and also through the lens of product working with experience design and what that means in the new reality that we're setting in. As well as through the changes of that reality as well. Given everything is changing, you can't stay static. You can't really sit and look like trapped in lights. You really need to change. And for me, change is kind of a step process. And so we shouldn't be scared or trying to sit down and plan a big change. As Tiago mentioned, use context, use what you know about your customers and try to make a step change. There is definitely a new narrative. We can't ignore that. We know people are moving, they're shifting habits. And so when change happens, the most important thing from product perspective that also relates into experience design is, why did this change happen? You really want to go into understand the reason for that. And to me, the reason is not really something like, oh, lockdown happened, oh, COVID happened. No, that's just a circumstance. That's just something that is around us, the environment. But to me, the change, for example, then would be, oh, people are actually moving out from the city and moving somewhere else. That's a change. People can't afford to buy the same things as before. That's a change. So this is the type of changes that you are looking for when you're starting to think, oh, what has changed for my user? And you should actually expand even wider. You really open up and start thinking. You would have customers change. That's very, very likely for any product. You would have organizational change that you need to go through as well as people start working in different ways. You would then inevitably have to have tools and operational change, right? Because you might not be able to use the same tool set as before. You need to really start thinking and expanding and looking what's out there that can help you. There is even different type of change, like regulations are changing. And we can see with COVID how much of that has happened, and also how quickly businesses had to adapt to that change. Lockdown, masks, contactless delivery, all these things kind of almost felt like they happened overnight, right? They didn't, but teams got together in a very agile, flexible way, and those that could make that change happen for their businesses so that they can make sure that the product survives and also develops with the change as well. And as change happens, the one thing that I feel very strongly about is to not marginalize emotion. Your customers, and so are we as well, because we are also customers, are more emotive than ever. They have a lot going on in their lives, and really the focus shift to me from product and experience design is, let's bring some empathy back to our customers. Maybe we became a little bit cocky. Maybe our business was doing really, really well. We didn't really have to work that hard for our customers. We had perhaps a very well set analytics. We knew exactly where and what our customers are doing. But now we're in a different boat. And to me, empathy and emotion needs to come back. And this is where you should really start thinking, how can you make that experience much more emotive and much more contextual, actually, to your customers as well. And so anything that you can add to expand within your product toolset that can bring that in, whether that be through design, whether that be through innovation, whether that be through a new set of data that you're going out, a new discovery ways, you need to make that happen to be able to adapt. And the reason for that is because less in-person interactions has an impact on how you get to know your customers. As I mentioned, well, I know for myself, we have a very kind of well-defined way, how do we go about and learn about our customers? Pizza Hut, for example, is an old brand, right? Experienced brand. There's a lot of well-established practices, not just in UK, but across the different countries and markets we support. And so, but with that, we can't now be complacent. We really need to shake up, and we had to shake up and start thinking, well, how and what do we do now to understand the change that our customers are going through? Pizza Hut is also a franchisee business, and you can imagine that it's not just the end consumer that is experiencing change, it's our business partners that are also experiencing change. And so operational change and working with that, how do you measure the change within the new context became a big priority for us. And so we really had to revisit, and I urge you to do so, your tool set. What do you need to go and where do you need to go to get that new information? You heard Tiago mentioned as well. Ted also mentioned a couple of things there. That is, do you need to go to social media? Do you need to go and do something different that you've not done before? Do you need to do blog posts, for example, or go and look for content at blog posts? Do you actually need to keep a much sharper eye on your competitors and how they're reacting to the market? Because now, you know, the market is anyone can come in and grab some of the share. And so the key here is to try to capture customer feedback in a new way, because the old way is just simply not going to be enough. I'm not saying it's not going to work. What I'm saying is just not going enough. You need to top up your knowledge bucket in a new, fresh way, which becomes even more challenging when you have distributed teams now, right? We're no longer together. We're working in very, very different way. Maybe you're lucky and you're you work for a business that's already a distributed business. And now you're reaping the benefits and you're like singing and dancing because you're feeling, oh, nothing's changed for me, I'm happy. But a lot of businesses are not in that boat. Retail, for sure, there's a lot of that. Food delivery had to certainly change. People that within that business, a lot of things had to change. But the time now is right to move anyway towards distributed teams. This has been coming for a while now, right? The trends in remote working has been growing and growing over the last years. And so as a product person, the biggest challenge is how do you lead and adapt within your team within this new setting? What do you need to change to empower your team to work to the best of their capability, but in a very different way, working from home? Because you won't have any more the luxury of just turning around and asking a question to someone and get the immediacy of answer, right? If you're slacking, if you're Zooming, whatever you're doing, the immediacy is gone. You're not going to be able to get your questions as quick as possible. Imagine if you work across different markets. If I need something from my American market or from my Kuwait market, it takes even longer, right? And so the key challenge is here to get the right tool set to enable your team to achieve what they need to achieve. And it's the same with the customer's behavior, right? We don't behave the same way we used to behave. You know, we're trying to do different things and to adapt in our personal lives, in our settings, working with everyone at home, with children running. But now we're also adapting to the next phase, right? Now I'm working from home. Now I'm not working from home. Some of my colleagues are. So it is important that we all change together as a group, and you need to lead that change. You need to be sure that you are the driver and you monitor what works and what doesn't work.
So you're saying you need to be that beacon, that shepherd in your role.
You need to be a beacon. I think I don't like the shepherd word at all. I personally think that a product owner, of course, it depends where you are, right, and what business you're working in. But a product owner should certainly have their mind and eyes open, because it is up to these people to then react really, really fast, right? Yeah. You're not the one to say yes to everything. You're the one to say, oh, we can do contactless delivery, and we can do that straight away because I have a team that's swift and nimble enough to do that, and I can turn this around in 3-4 days and save my customers and save my franchisees.
Okay, I think Nimisha has a question specifically on your experience here. Have you, Nimisha? I think
it takes a little while to take myself off mute. But speaking about that Shepherd and Beacon kind of thing that you were talking about, do you have any examples from your experience where you have been that beacon to make that change happen?
I love the word beacon because you can be a beacon with really small changes and equally with really, really big changes. And the most recent experience I had where is probably a beacon thinking, but only within the context of our business, really. Maybe for some would not look so kind of mind-blowing, but the team was tasked to do with some optimization changes on registration form as a new user registration, because we were feeling it's not working well, it's not fast enough, and it was looking a little bit dated, right? So the challenge was to optimize the registration form. But when I looked at it, I thought, but why do we even need a registration form? Right? Don't be the person who just says, oh, okay, yes, I will remove the surname. You only have to have a first name, and maybe it's not mandatory. You don't need a date of birth. Why can't you just forget all that, right? Why can't you just let people in and do something that is completely different and put your user first? So what we did is I really wanted to do passwordless authentication. I didn't want registration. I wanted to be like, enter your phone number, get a code, authenticate yourself, and come in, welcome, and shop. You don't need to worry about too many things. How important is it to actually have real registered users and the value of them for our business specifically? And so to me, it's like, don't say yes straight away just because you've been asked to do something. Look at the market, look at how users behave. And actually, passwordless authentication for that specific market, and that was India, they do everything on their phone. Everything on their phone. It's just a cultural behavior. We don't do quite the same behavior in UK. Other markets will be very, very different. But if it fits that audience and your user, just use that and run with it. Don't try to do one size fits all.
Thank you.
The moments that you need to drive forward. These are the little beacon moments that kind of come together and drive forward the whole business.
Yeah, definitely. I think actually Ted had some questions.
Izzy, I really like that description of taking out friction for users. That's one of the things I've been doing over the last couple of years, very specifically and intentionally. If you can find there's a way to get from A to B without going through C, as it were, then you can really benefit everyone. You get much lower drop-off rates for your funnel. I think that's fantastic. How do you deal with the legacy business and trying to introduce that style of thinking to them?
This is always a really, really tough one, I have to say. And I sure hope everyone has seen legacy and had to deal with legacy business. And I have to say that it's never easy to introduce a change. And I wouldn't lie, Pizza Hut is a really old business. You can guys imagine there are some legacy challenges, not just technological one, but operational one as well, right? And so the world can be quite complex when it comes to legacy. The good news about legacy is, which I actually quite like, is that they're often very inefficient. It goes in my favor, right, as a product owner when I have to pitch a change. They're very costly. They're very often unstable. They definitely do not benefit the user. Maybe Nimisha actually could agree, because when you have really heavy legacy systems, it's very hard to improve anything on them. And so the good news is also the bad news. So it's kind of best of both worlds, because it means that this would be very, very hard to change. So it comes down to you being in the golden middle where you're going, well, this is the value of our customers' happiness, right? And you need to offset that versus the cost. And I challenge a business to say, forget about the value of the customer, right? That would be the wrong decision for sure. You want to champion the customer. And that's how I approach it. I try to show that value with whatever measure of unit measure that speaks to that stakeholder or that group. And then try to show them the opportunities that there are to not just bring and build up on that new experience, but potentially also open ancillary revenue. And when you start talking about if you make that change, you're not going to only improve what you're currently saying or what you're currently doing, but you would also open up new opportunities, then people's minds get really like, oh, what? You said what? Oh, new revenue channel. I love that. Let's do that. This is how I deal with it. But that's not to say it's not an easy battle, huh? You need to really have the numbers to show the value. So you do need to think and plan ahead.
And I think you've really, like, by doing that, you've decoupled what the benefits are from the legacy system. So you're saying, actually, this is what a good customer experience looks like. And right now, you're imagining that this links to that legacy system or platform, but you're convincing that actually it's not to do with that. It's to do with something completely different. And by decoupling that, you've then, you can then find those additional opportunities and those additional revenue drivers, because you're not connecting those dots together when they don't actually need to be together.
Correct. They don't need to be connected at all. And it's just the customer happiness and the value. You want to shift them into that mindset, right? That shift needs to happen. And I also use, whenever I see them, their mind is just about to switch. And I feel like, okay, let's do a quick test, right? Let's do something that we can just take to market very, very quick. At John Lewis, we did that little test inside the store, and it was a real eye-opener to those stakeholders that were just like, sitting on the fence, not sure whether they should cross it or not. And so once you start to separate those two, you really open yourself to a lot of opportunities there, and you can really use proofs of concepts, any quick tests, and you can go for it and have such great fun. And then you come out of it with doing something that very few people manage to do, is change your mindset.
Great. And would you agree, Tiago, here? I know that you're very keen on putting out these proof of concepts. You've done them, you've always done them. So would you like to perhaps come in here and tell us about maybe a question you could ask Izzy?
Mostly, like, I want to agree. So particularly with I want to double agree on the numbers thing. So have your numbers, have your numbers, have your numbers. They don't have to be right. They don't have to be exact, but have your reasoning right. If you call out your numbers, like your assumptions, and they're not correct, you can easily adjust them. Just, update your assumption to a correct number that you got from the data team, from the operational team, whatever. But have that rationale, have that, if we do this, I am assuming that a customer will be worth $10 a day. If that $10 a day is not exact, you adjust that later, but build your rationale on top of these assumptions that are transparent, that people know what you're talking about, and how that change is going to become that uplift in the end. So organize that, keep that house tidy so that it can be adjusted to the reality easily, and take it from there. Iterate and extract as much uplift from your experiments, but always make sure to have the numbers, even if you might not know exactly what they are yet, and you're going to have to maybe implement some tracking to get the exact number later. Don't let that stop you. You can already sell the idea internally, even though you don't have the tracking in place. Make some assumptions, make sure they're clear. So the experiments can also start as thought experiments in that way before they make it to paper or to screen. So always start experimenting from the beginning, even as a thought experiment based on some assumption numbers. It's already a good exercise, and it's going to iterate into the real thing.
Thanks for that, Tiago. And this kind of leads on to a question I have for Izzy. Has your team needed to adjust to using different product consumer research methods during the pandemic?
Everything has changed, right? And we weren't really able to see users anymore, as in face-to-face. We weren't able to have focus groups, as we used to. We are not able to bring anyone in person to just look at interactions and, do a little play and role play with them. It's very, very different. And that's why I was talking. So how do we then go about and try to get that emotional connection back with our users? And there was a conversation as well with the UX and design team, the whole user experience team. How do we go about there? And so we started thinking we need to be more open towards listening to social media and channels ourselves and have conversations there, right? And try to engage with people that way through content that they share, through their thoughts that they share. And historically, we've not really been doing that much of this. And some businesses are really good at this, but those that don't have social kind of conversation going, then that's a great way to reconnect with your customers. So what did you like? What did you not like? How are you doing this? Customers would also need a little bit more hand-holding. And I think what we do tend to forget is that they would pick up the phone if they're not happy. They would email if they're not happy. So let's not forget customer services and actually prepping your customer services team to be more patient, more empathetic, to actually have the right answers to them. Because we're very quick to really be, oh, let's put a poll on the website, let's do a feedback form. But how about a live chat? You want to be able to have an immediate answer. When I'm super stressed, I have all these things happening, my whole family is on top of me, I just want an answer. And perhaps the easiest way is just get someone available on live chat. More and more businesses are turning to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Conversational marketing seems to be something that companies are doing more now, because as you mentioned, this is a sensitive period, and when you can engage somebody face to face, it's more human, it's more natural. So getting those conversations going really quickly. I'm sure Tiago will talk a bit more about perhaps this with chatbots and AI and stuff later, but it's definitely, this is the time to be doing that type of stuff. So,
and I really encourage you guys, if you are in product, if you are in experience design, go and sit with the customers and actually sit and answer their questions in the chat, or even ask some extra of their time and ask them the questions you want to ask them that have nothing perhaps to do with their resolution. Once their resolution is done, just be there and try to engage.
Yeah, the other thing I'll say with that is that if you go to a call center, the people who are in the call center or dealing with social media queries, they know all the problems of your brand. They're so much closer to it than you are. And it should just be a regular thing where everyone goes and sits with them for a period of time, maybe answer some calls themselves. There's a good story from Facebook where on the ad side of the business, one of the senior leaders went there, answered some calls himself, and the person who was speaking with said, "Can I speak with your manager?"
Absolutely. I think, absolutely. And I think more and more we're seeing peer-to-peer platforms now, especially to help, always been to help customers, business to customer, but we're seeing that more with business to business. And, that type of thing, I think, would be very relevant to a company like, say, Abcam, where you can get that conversation started. You can see what the conversation is among professionals, these scientists that really know what they're talking about, but they want to be able to talk to somebody else that's their peer on there. So I'm sure Felicia could perhaps come in here and support me on this, but maybe you're doing other things as well in that area.
Oh, was that from Nimisha?
For Nimisha, Nimisha, is there anything, do you agree with that? Do you think that could help with Abcam, this kind of peer-to-peer type of platform that can get conversations going really quickly?
I think there's definitely an opportunity there. I'm not entirely sure, I haven't envisaged how it would work quite yet. It's not quite a Facebook, it's not quite an Instagram, but there's definitely something where you want to connect people who are key opinion leaders or learning in their area, and that's why conferences are so popular. But there's also a balance between lots of people are working on really private projects where there's a bit of an arms race with another lab who are working on something different on the other side of the world and wanting to get that published first. So there's definitely this balance on sharing, but also winning that race.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks
getting that right. There's definitely a sweet spot. We just need to find it.
Yeah, absolutely. Have we got any more questions for Izzy from the table? We've got about 5 minutes left, guys, on this main stage. Does anyone want to jump in?
Izzy, so I was asking before about the brand side of the equation. Can you tell us a bit about how to deal with bad experiences for the user if one has happened?
Bad experiences happen so quick and so often now. And I think the way I feel about it very strongly, and the way we also try to do it within Pizza Hut, to be able to solve the problem as quick as possible and to be able to connect with the user through many different channels, to have an immediacy of solution. That's one thing. And the second thing is to be able to be frank with your customer. Say, for example, you're just so overwhelmed with orders that you're not able to dispatch them as quick as you usually are or what they're used to. If you be frank and upfront with your customer and you keep them informed throughout that journey and say, your order is a little bit late because we're really overwhelmed. There are too many people who love the pepperoni pizza. I was just overwhelmed with orders. Then they would be okay. They would see you're doing your best to get them what they want, to the quality that they want. And I think this is key. We have to bring context into conversation with our customers to take them on that journey. To me, that's always the best way to deal with bad experiences. If you can, just provide the reason that speaks to them. Don't make it up. But, there's always a reason for something to have gone wrong. And always reassure them that we will try better next time, right? We're always trying.
And I think something that may be on all your audience mind is, do we have a new pizza coming soon? There's something exceptional coming out.
There is always a new pizza. The latest new pizza was, I don't know if anyone tried, it was a collaboration with KFC. So we actually had a popcorn chicken pizza that flew off the shelves, well, off the ovens, really. It was really, really popular. And, people just could not get enough of it. So there's definitely Christmas coming. And so there will be a new pizza.
Yeah.
What with, Rupert?
No, I definitely will do that for sure. And just one more question from my side. We've got over 3 minutes left. You've been talking a lot about obviously the product management side of things, but I think maybe the audience would really like to know perhaps how some of these things that you may be looking at working with, say, places like Deliveroo and to maybe improve the process on that, improve the customer journey on that side. Have you got anything that you're working on right now?
We are not really working on, we're really trying to improve the journey of the customers that come directly to us. And to us, this is really important because we have a lot of brand ambassadors. We have a loyalty scheme as well. We want to make sure that these customers are well taken care of. Customers that go through aggregators, we trust our aggregators in our relationship with them, for them to take good care of our customers. But to me, the key is to make sure that the products that are available, the information that you get for them, that is up to a standard that we expect. Even the visuals, the images, the brand, everything needs to be there for our customers. And we're really, really passionate about that. And I think often people kind of forget that, oh, it's aggregator, oh, it's Deliveroo, but it is your brand, and your brand is just being represented by an aggregator. So build that relationship and make sure the customers are getting the same experience as well. They come to you because they love the brand, and perhaps come to you because you provide great deals, and you're always top of mind for them. But if you are invisible amongst all the other brands, then they would very quickly switch, or just try and do something else. And so to me, that relationship is very important, that you are the champion of your own brand and how it appears on these different aggregators and platforms. So you should be really kind of taking care of that.
Thank you, Izzy. That's great. That's really great insight as well to the brand. So yeah, guys, I think we will now move on. Thank you very much for your contribution within this main stage event, and hopefully some of the audience, I don't see many questions on this side. Perhaps this was maybe too product management business focused for the audience, but I think it gives everyone a really broad idea behind what goes on in experience design, what goes on behind the surfaces. We're talking about personalization, but we have to have the teams and the team structure and how that works. And so much based on the customer journey is how the employees work. If the employees aren't working in a way, then that's going to impact on the customer feedback and everything. So thanks so much for that, Izzy. Really, really useful. So yeah, let's move on to the next main stage segments, and yeah, let's welcome back Tiago Giraldi to the main stage, where I think he truly loves to be. Tiago is going to lead our next discussion around future technologies for experience design. So the stage is yours, Tiago.
All right, thank you, Rupert. Yeah, so the next half hour, we're going to talk about extended reality, the future, augmented reality, virtual reality, and so on and so forth. So this is going to be a bit of an exercise in futurology, and also in just predicting the trends that are already materializing out there. So not so kind of a presentology a little bit. So I did include a little bit of a text there that you guys can check later, but I'm going to summarize the main points and use them as conversation starter. So if anybody has a question, please do pop your questions up in the chat, and we can I can stop and we can answer them. So to give you a broad definition of what extended reality is, this is my own definition. It's not a working definition for this discussion. But let's define extended reality as a layer of information that is placed between our senses and the real world. So that is broad enough that I could say this is an immemorial human activity. We have been doing this probably as a species from the beginning. We have been like cracking the little old piece of wood to mark the way in the forest and things like that. So this thread goes the way a bit back to ancient Greek myths, a thread of Ariadne and whatnot, and Hansel and Gretel leaving things in the woods to mark their way. So anyway, they were interacting with the world around us to put a layer of information. We could say it's extended reality. So it's a bit of a too broad definition, so we're not going to be working with that, but it provides a good reference point, because we can bring a lot of techniques that we use to extend reality in the physical world. Before we even had technology, we can bring those in to modern technology as our technology progresses. Why? Because the fact that we are now potentially bringing this layer information into a rendered 3D digital format that is displayed on screens, potentially screens that are on our faces in glasses, makes things a bit more 3D, a bit more spatial, a bit more physical again. So we might be able to put billboards that are kind of digital, but look like a real billboard, and so on and so forth. So some of the age-old techniques to extend reality are starting to become hot again. So essentially, you can define extended reality in that broad way, but as product designers and as experience designers, we're really interested in the next shift. And especially as we talk about the future, we're interested in the next shift of technology. We can define the shifts we had on the internet so far, since we have been on the internet. We moved from those desktop PCs with those noisy modems attached to them to laptops in kind of ubiquitous internet at that point. And we moved from that to cell phones about 10 years ago, broadly speaking. And now it's kind of what's next, what's after cell phones. And there is a kind of a push for a next generation of screens and interactions that are not bound to a screen that you look at, but are kind of more integrated in your field of view, so to speak. Will that take the form of glasses that we're wearing, or just things that are displayed on walls around us and not really attached to us? All that is taking shape, but the next shift seems to be in exploding these interfaces from the palm of our hands onto the physical world again. Another thing I wanted to call out is that in that shift, these technologies are kind of starting to appear, whether there's a big bang about the release or not. So augmented reality started to become ubiquitous in the form of face filters for camera apps and social networks, or perhaps the QR codes that I mentioned before that you use to scan things in the world around you. So a lot of these things are kind of creeping in without a big bang associated with them. A lot of virtual reality is coming to us via Google Maps and things like Street View. Even it's a form of virtual reality. It's one of the most popular virtual reality apps in products like the Oculus Quest and so on. So a lot of these things, they're not necessarily going to come about with a big release in some Steve Jobs-like figure introducing the iPhone. Maybe we'll have that moment. We had that moment a little bit with the Oculus in its gaming niche. But really, technologies are being adopted kind of gradually. Suddenly, it's going to feel like it was sudden type of thing. Another point I wanted to call out about how we are extending reality and what users are really liking is the physicality of it. So there is an understanding or a misunderstanding that augmented reality, extended reality are merely visual tricks, basically things that display information or digital information onto your field of view. It's not just that. It's you might not be able to see very properly and still enjoy virtual and augmented reality in different ways. What we see that is most successful is when these technologies get users to interact with the world around them in new ways and do things that are actually physical. So you will see the popular AR and VR apps like Pokemon Go or Beat Saber. They get people to move around, maybe in the same place, just exercising or going around their neighborhoods. But it's not just about what you are seeing. It's about what you are experiencing, and it's about freeing you to do things with your body, whatever it is that you are able to do with your body or that you want to do with your body in that context. But it's about freeing your hands, freeing your attention at times from the demanding screens that we have been looking at. Let me see what else about the in-your-face VR. I think it's important as we start discussion to consider that AR VR technologies that are actually strapped onto your face. This is something that is going to be on our minds. So are people ready for this? Do people want this? In what situations people might need that or might desire to have that? We have had these products pushed onto us since I was a kid. So since before you guys were born, like the Nintendo Virtual Boy was released in the 80s. So there have been attempts to move screens onto our faces for a long time. We are now kind of fresh out a bit of a successful product, which has been, I think the Oculus Rift has been the most, the Oculus platform has been the most successful, even though it's still niche, still gaming. It has proved that there is a bit of a commercial potential there. So the topic of are we going to be wearing glasses on our faces and the related concerns around privacy and all that should also be on our minds as we think about new experience designs for this new world. Another thing that I would like to call out is the little bit of virtual and augmented reality things that have also been quickened by the COVID pandemic. So we are seeing that certain things that have been around for a long time, such as video conferencing and telepresence and things like that, and a little bit of IoT, Internet of Things. All of these things have been coming for a long time, but not really arriving. And now they have been quickened by COVID, and they are suddenly all around us. So it's important also to call out that some things that it's never gonna be popular suddenly became popular in a short period because they were needed and because we were aware that they existed and we remember them and resorted to them. Also, I would like to point as virtual reality that's kind of augmented reality that's kind of already appearing around us, kind of almost without us noticing. Again, referring to Google Maps, but also Facebook and YouTube. Google is all the 3D video content and the 360 video content in all this virtual reality content that is cheap to produce because it's made with cameras. It's not rendered. These are not games that people are building. This is just recorded video experiences that can be shared and experienced as virtual reality, can be made interactive in certain ways, sometimes in simple ways that kind of refer back to how we build web pages, which is just hyperlinks. So like videos can have hyperlinks that create basic interactivity in basic virtual worlds for people to explore. Similarly, with augmented reality, from a technical standpoint these days, you could say augmented reality is in a way virtual reality with a transparent background. Instead of having a virtual world as its background, you have the real world and your elements projected onto it. So very similarly, you can also use simple recording technologies, emerging technologies, to record the world around you and overlay information onto it. These things are getting cheaper. Even the failures that we have seen, such as Magic Leap trying to release a augmented reality glasses for the masses, they failed, but they're very well funded, so they're still around, and they had a plan for failure. So they are now offering their headset, which is expensive for individuals to watch Netflix poorly on it, but it's actually quite affordable for a company to use for more specialized ways. It costs about $2,000-$3,000 or something like that. So these, I think this is all context about how this technology is already around us, how large companies in large initiatives are trying to move them forward. Another way I would like to call out how reality is being augmented around us is this new batch of social media apps, including I'll call out TikTok. I think it's a great one. What these tools have is an easy way to edit and create video on the go. So apart from just opening TikTok to enjoy the videos, kind of like Vine before that, or Instagram before that, they also provide editing tools that are, for the first time, very easy to use on a quick platform. So if you're out somewhere, you can just pull up your phone and make some content that then will be shared in a way that will augment somebody's reality. So I've been following TikTok. You start to see, and I follow travel content on TikTok, you're starting to see people offering or posting, sharing content that is like, okay, if you're here in this place and you look at that corner and you enter that door, and they kind of create an edited video because it has like 6 different pieces of footage for them to achieve that little message in 15 seconds. But they were able to create a video that instructs somebody how to do something, say find a hidden spot or fix something in their home or something. They are able to edit that expertise that they have into a 15-second video and share it out there. How is this augmented reality? It's just video sharing. Well, if your video was about how to fix your boiler and somebody's pulling up your video to fix their boiler, you just augmented their reality, because you were their virtual, you were their virtual boiler engineer right there and then. Users are coming up with these use cases. So platform was not built for that. The platform is not automatically surfacing that information. People are going there and searching, but users are creating these use cases that augment the reality. And I think what the platform is going to be, we still don't know. I think we're going to have some bats here. We're going to be wearing glasses. I think not yet. I think we're going to see information on windshields and actual windows and walls before people are strapping screens onto their faces. But the use cases, I think we as customers and product managers, of course, and experience designers, we get to create them. And yeah, I think also, again, for the example of the boiler, if you during the lockdown had anything like your boiler broke and your engineer could not come and instead guided you via a WhatsApp call, you just did augmented reality. You might not have seen them as a floating avatar yet, but they were digitally brought onto your room, and you have the boiler to help you out. I didn't have that with the boiler, but I had that happen. I fixed my bike on the road like that with a call with the bike shop. So I was very glad that I didn't have to wait for rescue. And yeah, I think these are the use cases that are arising, and we're going to think of more. And then the use cases might dictate what kind of hardware is successful, what kind of platform is successful, what kind of business model ends up being successful.
Yeah, I just definitely see there is going to be a connection between the 3D movement that we can now use and that augmented reality. I was just thinking of an example there where the boiler man could actually give you a bit of a tour, 3D of what to do. So that would be super useful. Do you know of any examples that I know it's not kind of strictly kind of virtual reality, but are companies starting to kind of use this kind of 3D to bring you into their environment and become more immersed in it? Are companies starting to do this more with branding now?
I think for now, you will hear more about the companies that are providing the technology that does that. So I'll say Magically. I don't think there's, I don't have any use cases in particular because they're selling to individuals, so they're not going to be a big name, but they have precisely that use case. So as they failed in pushing that to the masses, meaning they wanted to make this popular the way the iPhone became popular. So here's this amazing tool that can do all these things. Here's this open platform. You guys create apps. That didn't fly. People weren't ready for the glasses, and so developers weren't rushing to create the apps. However, they honed in a use case, which is what you described. So what if I could draw things in a 3D space? They honed in the use case, created an app that is their own app, very versatile to do just that, kind of record little tutorials around you using the Magic Leap as a camera and as a drawer of digital lines in 3D space. This is very flexible for a number of things, including the boiler use case, some inventory rooms and things like that. And they have found some success selling that to mostly small and medium business. I think at this point, architecture firms. Sadly, I don't think boiler engineers have that yet. It's expensive for their budgets, but it's getting cheaper. But yes, that precise use case is basically what Magic Leap is calling their main one in a B2B setting. Something that allows, say, said engineers or whatever kind of employee it is, be trained and learn how to go about their everyday tasks without having to have a supervisor right next to them. So this is something they did started to do pre-COVID, but now post-COVID, in which people cannot get together in rooms for trainings. This sort of stuff becomes ever more useful.
Great. Does anyone else have any questions for Tiago they want to come in now with?
I mean, to me, this is really, really interesting. I love this conversation, and especially around using the technology to actually teach someone to do something or to help them do something that they won't be able to do. And the reason I'm saying this is because, remember when I said I really like to be a beacon? I'm no shepherd. People that know me know that I do not do that. I've been really trying to figure out how we can use technology. And now, of course, we're selling pizza, so that's a little bit challenging. How does that work? But then you open your mind and you think, well, can I help someone else within the organization, like the people that are actually doing the pizza, and their ovens break or something breaks and they have to wait for someone to come and help them forever. And I think this is where we really need to start thinking. So don't just think about your user, though I do love how users just decide how to use technology themselves. You cannot prescribe this, and it's been proven so many times. And really with that in mind, I'm asking, but are we really ready for that extended reality and that type of technology to come into our life? Because it may feel quite scary and intimidating to people, right? This is a completely different way. Before you call someone, this person comes in, they fix your problem. Maybe you wait or you don't wait 2-3 weeks, a month, whatever. And now it's so immediate, but it's a new way of doing things. What do you think?
I would say, I think we're ready. I think we've been ready. I think we were born ready as a species because we just like this stuff. We like to augment it and we like to make it easy for the next guy. And we like to have it easy for us when we come to whatever task. What I don't think the technology is ready for us. We are demanding. So I think it's kind of the technology is not ready. So I feel we are ready because we're even hacking ways to augment our reality with whatever tools we got, including technology tools that we might not understand. I'm sure these restaurants, right, that I've been eating at here in Portugal, they had no idea what a QR code out was. And they didn't know. And now they all go to one link, or they generate their own. they do the tracking for it. You know, like they learn so much in such a short time because they had to. So I think we are ready, willing, and even prepared to hack things a bit into if we can get the experience we want to do some effort. But the technology, and now I'm talking like about glasses like this that you strap onto your face. The Apple and other companies, Facebook, I don't know. I don't think Ted can talk about it because their projects around this are very secret. So let's not. But there's a perception that it's about making it light enough because the generation that we have is like bulky handsets. Is it though about making it light enough, make them light enough? I think what we need to see here for the technology to be ready for us is, I would say it needs to be backwards compatible. Basically, you need to cover what you had before. I see one thing I observed a lot is how my very young nieces reacted to things like the Oculus Rift and using Netflix on there. They don't bat an eye. They go in there and they watch Netflix for as long as you let them inside a headset. But I'm thinking every time, especially media technologies, we're talking about media when we're talking about these glasses on our faces. Whenever a new media technology comes about, it kind of needs to, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it needs to replace what came before. So if I think about the first thing that I gave up in its analogical form, and I saw everybody giving up, was CDs. And that happened when MP3s were easy enough to download, fast enough to download, and had a quality that was good enough that we were like, fine, I'm not going to listen to this. I don't care about CDs anymore. That was MP3. That was not Spotify yet, so it doesn't have to be perfect. The quality of the MP3 was still not, I don't know if it was not the same or not perceived as the same. Some of the MP3s that I had was like 64 kbps, whatever. They were bad. The quality wasn't perfect yet. The download, I remember downloading, I think, Madonna music, and it took 1 hour. From so sick. 1 hour to download one song. And it was the one that, no, it was another song, but it was one that she famously dropped on the internet. It was fake, and it was just an audio of Madonna saying, what the expletive do you think you're doing? It was a fake song. If you guys remember that.
Wow.
Remember that? So like 1 hour to download that thing on Napster, and then it was just Madonna trolling you. But at that point, people were switching. They were like, okay, this is better than paying $15 a pop for an album. So it needs to be backwards compatible enough, and it has the right price point, and all that is worth it. And I don't think we're there yet, because same thing with digital books. They had to be, until we've had the ability to read things on screens pretty much since we've had screens. But it was not until we had the Kindle and much better smartphones. Can you guys still hear me? Because I do not hear anything.
Yes.
Okay, cool. It was not until we got the Kindle, which is a fantastic product, one of my favorite products. I'm critical of it as well, especially in terms of software, but hardware is fantastic. And much better smartphone screens. It was not until that satisfied our demands as a reader that we really started to move from books, and not everybody has. Same thing with streaming video. It had to be fast enough, load fast enough that we could let go of the DVD by mail or from Blockbuster or whatever model. So I think these new virtual screens, they have to be good enough that we are comfortable using our word processor on them, watching our new Netflix show on them. And the way things are, Oculus Rift is fantastic, but are you really going to watch the season finale of your favorite show on it? Probably not, because the quality is not that great yet. So when it is, and it kind of encompasses what we get from the current iteration of things, I think then we're going to move, and we're just going to move.
Okay, great. I think.
What about?
So good. I was going to say we probably got a mixture of small business employees and big business employees listening to this or watching this rather. Why should a small business marketer be learning about high-price VR campaigns?
I think first thing is make sure they're not high-priced. So let's not do anything high-priced when it's experimental. There are ways to do all kinds of technology on the cheap, including the video footage that I mentioned and all that. So do some research about how can I get into this with a lot less investment. When a field is new and uncertain, you don't want to just invest too many resources yet. But why should you be looking into VR at all? I would say one is because the early adopter crowd that's using these tools, they are early adopters, right? So they might adopt your products because you have a new offering. So just to get exposure to a new audience that's a good audience to have, that's likely to have a high purchasing power, being open to experiment and so on and so forth. I think at this point, and usually actually anytime VR comes about in the past many years, it's good PR because people, this is the kind of technology that has been coming for decades, and people always have the sense that now it's the time, and they're always curious to see what's the latest. So it's one of these fields that even if people are not really into VR, they are popular. It's a popular topic. People want to know what's up when there's new things coming up in that field. So we'll get exposure, get new eyeballs. You get free media basically just for having VR. The flower shop. No flower shop have VR. If you're the first flower shop in your state area that has VR, you might make local news over that. So that's a great, it's just a great publicity. So I think those alone, the cost benefit of those alone is enough for you to make business sense out of investing in VR.
Okay, great. Well, it seems that as you pointed out in this discussion, that you don't necessarily need to go for the big cost VR. There's a lot of stuff that you can do that is more kind of, as you said, augmented reality. And I know personally, I've seen some really interesting campaigns. I know that that there's something by Boursin Cheese. I don't know if you're familiar with the Boursin Cheese brand, but it allowed you to have a 3D tour through a fridge to make us more aware of those diverse flavors that Boursin Cheese offers. So, obviously that isn't like VR, but it is a type of augmented experience. And I know brands are really pushing with that. And similarly, something that might be quite relevant to the kind of more, I suppose, the younger audience watching this is that the US brand Wendy's, very famous for its kind of burgers, teamed up with Fortnite to enable game players to interact with a virtual character called Wendy, who encouraged players to smash freezers to highlight that Wendy's only provides the freshest of meat in its burgers, and it really took off. So, it's interesting. I think you have to go to what you can do, what you can afford, but I agree. If you're able to use this technology, then you can really make a meal about it, and you can advertise the fact that you're using it.
Yeah, I agree. Like, so yeah, and I think there's opportunities for all kinds of budgets. The idea is to continue to become top of mind, continue to be part of your customers' lives in different contexts. I do play Fortnite, and I haven't had Wendy's in years, and I just kind of craved up a square burger right now just from you talking about it.
It worked. So it's just creating a buzz around it. There we go. Just because we're talking about this technology.
And if you're a small business with a little budget, do explore these cheap ways. So I think like the flower shop example, make some videos of your. Nobody can come to your space right now because of the quarantine. Try. Gluing two, because that's how people do it. Glue a couple of GoPros together to make a 3D camera and create a 3D video of your shop and post that to YouTube. People who are watching YouTube primarily in their Oculus Quest are likely to find that more easily because they are browsing for content that is 180, 360 only. So you're already ahead of the crowd that doesn't have that. So find out which affordable ways you can start to have a presence.
Thank you, Tiago. I know that you've got a couple more minutes of this main stage. So do you want to leave the audience with anything in these final 2 minutes?
I would say that keep your mind open. Don't be spooked. Don't think that, this is not for me. I'm getting I'm only 24. I'm already old. This technology has shifted. This happens a lot. Every 10 years, things shift, but there are certain themes that survive. So take your learnings from what we have now, the learnings from the transition, and keep your mind open for the next stage of things.
Thank you, Tiago. Thank you very much. And I'm sure we've all learned something, and it's got our minds thinking about how we might use different technologies for the future. And the world is constantly changing. And like you pointed out, I think we're very capable of adapting. I think the whole situation with the pandemic has taught us, everyone, businesses and governments, that we can adapt to some really amazing things. So thank you very much for that. And so we'll move on. Anyone can speak to Tiago later in the small group sessions if you're lucky enough to get into one of those. But yeah, let's move on to the main stage with our Ted Truscott. Welcome to the main stage, Ted. Ted is a data science product management hybrid. He uses both disciplines to build and optimize digital experiences. He's worked across scores of retailers, brings experience spanning the mighty Superdry through to Facebook, and he's raised millions of pounds for charity at Just Giving, using the approaches we'll learn more about in his main stage event. So before further ado, Ted's talk.
Thank you very much, Rupert. So the topic that I've been asked to discuss here is about how to blend design and data. And when I first saw this, it reminded me of a time when I was very skeptical about the role of pure qualitative research. I was very used to working with huge amounts of data, being able to draw out insights from that, understand how people were interacting on a website, and know what to do to change and improve that. So when I came across qualitative researchers and designers, then it very often felt to me like it was relying more on anecdote. And as I say, I had the skepticism. Now, over time, I've mellowed, and I've worked with some phenomenal researchers and designers who taught me a huge amount about how to blend both practices. And I'd like to describe that for you now. I'm going to talk about three main areas. So firstly, I'll talk about the importance of focusing design efforts by thinking of a specific metric. In the second stage, I'll talk about how to target the right people that you need to design for. And finally, I'll talk about how to make sure that you've built something that's worthwhile, how to prove the impact with experiments. So if we think of that first section, I think it's really important before you start any design work to think about what is the purpose of this piece of work. This is a really important strategic step because without it, you may well be running in the wrong direction. That's if you start the work. If you didn't start the work and then you started building something, then the risk is that you're just going to be building something and hoping that it produces some consequences for the business. So very often you'll find there's disagreement over what you're designing or for whom. And I've worked on teams where the goal is unclear, which makes it horrendously debilitating. Researchers don't know what they're going to build or whether it's actually going to get used. And engineers don't know what they're building or why. So you run the risk of making those changes not knowing what they're going to achieve. You might be able to find a metric that's improved, and then you claim success, you send it up to your boss, you circulate it around the business, but you might not really be achieving very much for anyone. And I think that the sorts of businesses that do that also tend to be a little slapdash with their approach to testing more generally. So the risk is that they're claiming wins left, right, and center, and they're not really there. So how I'd go about this is, firstly, defining the metric that you want to move well in advance. Now, that's an ideal state. Sometimes you might need to discuss it a little bit. Sometimes it might emerge a little more organically, but you need to reach a consensus on what it is that you're trying to do and why. Once you've got that, you can then start to understand the drivers of that metric. And when you've got that, you can find the people that you think can move it. So once you've got your metric, you can also start to think about countermetrics. Now, countermetrics are ones where if you achieve success with your main metric, you want to make sure you're not harming something else. So that might be, we talked about conversion rate before, average order value. So that would be an example of a countermetric if conversion rate was your main goal. Again, you need to have this discussion up front. So it's very important to work out what your sensitivity is to that. Do you mind a 5% decrease of that metric? Or is it something that you really can't have any impact on whatsoever? At Facebook, I worked on a team where we were trying to stop people from posting bad content. Now, clearly, we could stop people from doing that if we stopped everyone from posting. But that wouldn't be a real-world benefit. That would get us the outcome we wanted, but we'd be gaming our metrics and gaming the system. So when we've got that, then we've got to focus for our design efforts that we know the metric that we're all going to be working towards, and it means that we can go off and we can start asking people questions about things that are going to be driving that metric. The next stage is thinking about targeting the right people. Now, if you aren't in advertising, then a lot of people, if you told them to make an advert, what they'd do is they'd go straight off and start drawing something up. Start with the actual content of the advert, maybe a slogan, maybe a picture, maybe thinking about how a TV campaign would look. When you speak with someone who works in marketing, they'll start off with the audience. And it's very much the same with design. What I'd suggest, and this is where I blend these two ideas, is that you can use data to find the right people. I think this is important because you need to know whether the design personas you've come up with actually reflect reality. So you may well have a group of 5 different user stereotypes that you think this is how people are interacting with your product experience. You need to go out and find people representative of that. And you always run the risk of trying to create too much of an average. The average person doesn't exist. In all the statistics books you'll come across, you'll always find the example in the US of people going out and trying to find the average airman, person who was 5'11", who had a handspan of so much, who had hazel eyes, whatever. That person just didn't exist. So you need to still understand. So even if you're not going to get the person who is actually representative, still make sure that what you think is happening is still reflective of reality. And data helps you do that. The other way of doing it, so that's trying to find a little bit more of, say, a more average median user. The other thing that I'd really suggest is trying to find extremes. So with the work I was doing most recently at Facebook, the extreme would be someone who really wanted to violate the Facebook terms and conditions. So they may well be posting pornography on a shared, on a group. And for them, that was just how they interacted with the site. They didn't have access to internet, or they didn't use it in the same way that other people were. So that's a really extreme user who's going to consistently violate the terms and conditions, partly because they don't know any better. So 2 extremes here. So you've got the more median user, and in the Facebook example, that would probably be someone who was, let's say, accidentally violating the Facebook policies for the first time. An example of that would be, say, a mum in Sweden who published a picture, maybe a story of her kids in the bath. Now, that looks very high severity, but if we understand the intent behind it, then we start to think that there are many more people like this, and we can try and build for them who might be more representative than our extreme user. Now, the skill here is, and this is where it becomes a bit of an art and a science, weighing up those 2 things. So we can try and build for the extreme user, which might mean making it much more, in this case, difficult for them. In other cases, you might be trying to really facilitate an interaction. Or you can think of the median user and just adding smaller amounts that nudge them in the right direction. When you go about this, I'll talk a little bit about team structure. So I really like the way that things are set up at Facebook, where you have a very cross-disciplinary team. You'll be working with designers, with engineers, product managers, data scientists, people in growth marketing, like the team I was in, and UX and research. So you have an established team there, but the problems we're dealing with are also very big. Now, the way we'd go about it is we would be able to go out and spend time with people. So we'd go on research trips and we'd be able to speak with people who violated. the terms and conditions, Facebook rules. Now, initially there was a little bit of skepticism about whether that would be a good thing to do, but actually it was fine. These people were very talk. A lot of them had made the mistake accidentally, and they needed to understand what Facebook's perspective was as much as we need to understand theirs. What we did when we had these people is we build up a wireframe and we try it out with them. And over the course of a week or a few days, with this very intensive process, we'd be able to iterate on that once people started saying the same things. So when you get that consistent feedback, that's probably a sign that you've got a good understanding of how this is going to work in the wild. There may well be, from that, you may well find, if you've got a representative group of users, that the things they're describing are actually very similar, that there are things you can fix with both groups. When you get into that phase, I think it's really important to start testing. I'll speak a little bit more about testing in a bit. Another thing you can do is think of the kind of personas you've got, cluster users together, and try and work out what features are they actually using, why. Now, there tends to be excess information on a website or product. And for a lot of the users, you want to just remove that, reduce the ability to be able to go into the wrong place, get them as smoothly as possible through to where you want them to. But for a small subset of users, that can be really important. So one of the things that I learned from this experience was making sure you do have access to those kind of things, but making sure that you're not distracting users, that you're still able to make sure the funnel works, that the flow works, and you get people doing the sorts of interactions that benefit them and your company. I'd also suggest bringing it back. So once you've gone into research sessions, you can start to use that research for the rest of the users. So there you're starting to model things out. So think about that median user. Is it the case that a small change for them is better than a big change for the more extreme users? Well, this is where the data comes in, because you can start to model and say whether that 10% change would actually be more meaningful for your top line impact than a smaller change for more users. And the way you design may all be slightly different between those two things as well. So when you model it out, you can then prioritize your efforts, and you can then move into more of the actual build phase.
Tech, do you mind if I jump in here?
Yes.
With all these these ideas that you've suggested and recommendations, what would the challenges be for B2B?
So in B2B, first, you can still segment users. So you'll have different use cases there and different levels of engagement for them. I also think we mentioned this in some of the other talks, that you will have people who are quite detractors from your brand. And I think you should really engage with them, because what they're likely, they're kind of the extreme. And the median person probably also feels that frustration that they're talking about as well. And the risk is that your product team may well start slagging them off and saying that these people are stupid, they don't understand the product, they're not using it in the right way. And that's a really dangerous situation to be in. If you're ever tempted to do that, you just have to remember that it's your fault that people are finding this frustrating. You need to fix it yourself. I think one of the other things with B2B is it can be harder to test. So you can't have a very small change on a small number of users. You need to make big, bold changes. I'd also suggest thinking in terms of the macro level, so making sure that you're using the right metrics. If you're looking for metrics that might not be as suitable for a business user, it might be better think in terms of a retention funnel and whether you bring them back in purchasing. Understanding customer life cycle is similar to B2C, really. And I think the other thing is the advantage of B2B, is that you've got people who've got a very specific problem to solve, and they're dealing with you because they're trying to solve that problem. So if you get them on side, and this can be a detractor even who ends up being on your side once you're able to work through those difficulties, then you can end up with a really strong group of advocates who want you to succeed because you're making their life easier. So I think, yeah, B2B is a very interesting place. The dynamics are slightly different. And another interesting fact is that the expectations people have got, and we spoke about this before, people are expecting Amazon levels of service. With Amazon, if I buy something, it costs £3. I can speak with someone about that and I can get a refund on it without even needing to send it back sometimes. Now you can compare that with a B2B company where I might be paying them, I don't know, £800 a day for services, and I can't get through to my rep. Now, and you really have to up your game and just understand why people are getting frustrated, perhaps in some cases. And
if I can just tag something on that, is just understanding the context and understanding the why. Again, linking back to my problem that I always try to solve, how can we measure and quantify emotion so then we can link that to specific problems and use that to map solutions against it? Do you have any wisdom or advice on that?
A couple of things here. So I think, again, the things you mentioned earlier are really wise, very, very, very worthwhile doing. I think when I come across this, then I find I never respond to a 4C survey because I know it's going to take me 20 minutes and I know it's going to get ignored by that company. But conversely, there are other brands, so DataCamp, where I'm learning Python at the moment, they'll always ask you, how good was this video tutorial, or how good was this little quiz that we gave you, or test? 5-star rating, and then if you give a 1, 2, 3, they'll want to know why. They'll also follow up with you later on, which is really rewarding for me because I know that I've helped them, which is my intention from doing that. So you compare that with very high burden where it's not going to get used, with very low burden where I can see the benefits. Now that gets me so much more bought in, and I understand that their proposition is always improving. Whereas the more legacy businesses will just be floundering and not really improving things, is my perception from the outside as a consumer. So I think that, yeah, making it really easy for people to respond and just making that response fit with their current emotional state. So it could just be, did this answer all your queries? Did this page help? You're not going to be able to get to the kind of emotion of this page reminded me of a time in my past when I was wronged while I was feeding a duck. You know, it's not going to be like that. It's going to be much more. It's going to be much more just gut. This is good. This is bad. And hopefully some explanation why.
It's more of a pulse check, which is actually quite beneficial because it's just in the time of the moment.
Yeah. I think the other thing I'd call out. So yeah, it's just in the moment. You can use that to test as well. So you can start to improve that. So if you found there is real frustration with a particular page, what's causing that? Can you reduce the frustration? You can measure that again. But I would just say, remember Goodhart's law, which is that when the measure becomes the target, it ceases to become a good measure. So make sure you're not just tricking whatever you're trying to optimize for. Tiago.
I'm gonna add something there. There's also provide the channels for people to share their emotions with you, because particularly when you're in a big brand like Pizza Hut and you have a large audience, there's always a number of customers that have emotions. Not only bad, for sure bad. There's a lot of that is bad emotions, and they want to rant at you and they want to talk to the manager, but also good and positive emotions as well. So just like people want to congratulate you or say that something was great. Provide a channel where they can share it. I'm saying this because one thing I saw at Hotels.com, which is a company I was at when they did this, was we introduced a little form just to correct information about the hotel those last week. So click here, opens a pop-up, and people could share. It was intended to just really correct things like, oh, they don't really have a swimming pool anymore, or something like that, so that we could learn about that. Because it was on the front page, or the front end, just a space there where people could type, we got all kinds of things there. We got like, oh, you're doing such a great job, thank you, to I hate you guys. So we provide channels for people to share emotions, and they will.
Yeah, this is another interesting place to use some of the like AI technology. The company I worked at before called Qubit, they had an exit feedback where people could just respond with whatever they wanted to. And very, very often it would be a price or a bug or like whatever it was that was on their mind, you really get it. And then you start to use the AI, group that together, and then you can see how things change over time, what the big frustrations are. Yeah, really, really powerful. Yeah, just letting people be able to use their own words. Yeah.
Good. Does anyone else have a question they want to give to Ted here?
I'm happy for the last stage then. So the last stage is that I've spoken a bit about how you go through the design process, incorporating data. I think the final stage is being able to prove the impact of that work. And I'm very, very keen on experimentation. It's something I absolutely love. I think it's a really scientific way of doing business, being able to prove the impact and making the right decisions. And also being prepared to be wrong, equally scientific, because it will mean you don't then repeat the same mistake. So once you've done all of the work and you've spoken with people and you've built something up and you know what you're trying to achieve, you need to be able to prove that it does actually do what you think it does. So you want to create real user behavior change. So again, this helps you focus your efforts by running these tests, because otherwise you could group a load of things together and never really know what did what. I think it's very important to try and be very parsimonious if you really want to learn. If you wanted to just say, does this redesign work? Sure, test the entire redesign. If you want to know whether one particular element works, just test that element. Very often people will just fudge those two things and then expect analytics to come up with the answers. It's not going to get you the real answer. The ideal state is that you can spend your time on it.
Okay. So obviously moving on to something that I think is quite relevant in terms of the time we're living in at the moment, Ted. Do you think COVID-19 has changed how you validate consumer and product data in your mind? How much has it done so?
Oh yeah, so well, validating data is really fundamental. It goes before everything else I've spoken about, and usually you want to just leave that to your analytics team. They're going to sort it. The danger here is that it's always a very low priority for them. And I think the teams who are best positioned will be ones who've already put in the hard work and are very confident with their data, with the pipelines. And then if they're spotting a change, they know it's not because the site's, the logging's breaking. It's because there really is a user behavior change there. Something I would watch out for, though, is that you don't just get any metrics in isolation. So for instance, if you're finding a 20% uplift in behavior for your particular product, look at how that's working across the entire site. So maybe the entire site's also got a lot more traffic, and actually on a relative basis, you're just benefiting from a rising tide. So yeah, with COVID, you've got some more extreme movements. So I would just say, put in the hard work in advance of things like this, and then you'll have more certainty about your underlying data.
Fantastic. And following on from that, I know that a recent McKinsey report stated that analytics should be aligned with business priorities during the COVID-19 period. And I believe their research found that only 30% of organizations align their analytics strategy with the broader corporate strategy. And that companies that have scaled AI effectively are nearly 4 times more likely than others to align these strategies. So, what do you think about these findings?
Well, I am a skeptic, Rupert. So when I see things like this, I wonder about motivated reasoning, because it's McKinsey, and also just causation and correlation here. So the companies that scale AI will tend to be more market leaders anyway. It's going to be the tech firms who, obviously you've seen the way the stock market's been rewarding them more recently. It's not going to be a mining company because they're very constrained with the physical product development, and they're not going to be the most dynamic. So a little caution there. That said, I'm all in favor of aligning analytics strategy. I think it makes so much more sense for that to be part of the way that decisions are made. As I've laid out, this kind of scientific approach to running businesses means that you can make a small change, test it, see if it works, build on that. Analytics can move from just being a reactive, descriptive team that's more like a BI team, and they can move into being very prescriptive, telling you what users are benefiting from, and then actually building up. We spoke about algorithms earlier, so building those algorithms and productionizing them, and then driving product development. Now, those teams and those businesses, if you've got your data set up in that way, necessarily are going to succeed. Because I think that once you've got the data there and you've set off, say, the machine learning on it, then it's going to produce better outcomes than the heuristics, the rules of thumb that you're using otherwise. It kind of necessarily follows there. I think that this is the way the world's going to go, really.
Yeah, well, thanks. That's a great answer for me, anyway, Ted. So we've got 5 minutes left of your main stage. Do you have anyone else in the round table that would like to? Oh, Misha, there you go.
Yeah, so you've described some really great things that we should look into when designing tests and thinking about where we want to focus our efforts. There seems like there's quite a lot there, and what sacrifices should you make in the real world to make the things we want to do achievable, but also we don't spend all our time just thinking and not doing.
Yeah, so I'm very aware of the risk of kind of analysis paralysis, as people call it. The way I've described things is to get out of that and to get you into actually being able to build something. Now, what I would suggest is to pare things down and just do the smallest version of each stage possible. So you're not going to run a huge test that's going to take very, very long time to be able to prove that the direction you're taking is worthwhile. You're not going to need to, as I've done before, travel to Brazil for a week for user research. You can probably find someone who's still representative of your users much easier than that. I think you also need to be very reactive, and COVID really shows that. So in some cases, you need to respond very quickly, maybe make the wrong decisions, be okay with making the wrong decisions, but so long as you're able to come back from those. And that could be by, let's say, blocking people from using certain features. Ocado, for example, won't let me use the app for a long time. When you bring that back, then you can show the benefits again of having something that you would otherwise have taken for granted, and it gives you another testing opportunity. So, yeah, I think you need to be responsive, but I would still try and make sure that you're able to understand users, know your metrics, build up a test, prove the impact, and work all the way through with a very joined up team.
And would you agree with that, Tiago?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for it to be agile and experimental, learn to keep your efforts down and create new functionality, new products, new offerings to try out. And throw away, don't be married to your ideas ever, because I think in products we never know what's going to happen, what customers are going to use, or as Izzy mentioned, how they're going to use it. People will do with technology what they will, and we have to be ready, nimble, and agile. So keep your efforts down, stay flexible. The way I see it is, I used the word repertoire before. I like to have a repertoire of components of things that you can throw together to create beautiful compositions, basically, because you never know what's actually going to work until you try it.
Thank you, Tiago. Brilliant. And what would you leave us with, Ted, from your side? Got a few minutes left from the main stage from your side.
Well, I'm a real advocate of this way of working. As I say, I started off being not really appreciating the role of design and data together. I saw them as two things that were in conflict. I really don't believe that's the case now. It is about team structure, the way you're working as a team, involving engineers in the right way, bringing them in, having those water cooler moments that are that much harder right now. But it's making sure that what you're doing is benefiting both you and the company. You as a consumer and the company. Being able to test that as well, I think, is absolutely fundamental to making the right decisions, because it's a much more scientific approach, not just the kind of gut feel and hoping that things are going to work.
Thank you very much, Ted. Yeah, it's been a great discussion, and I think you brought our minds back to why data is so important, and obviously we've mentioned a lot of the surface layers, making something pretty, making something workable from the user side, but underneath that comes the analytics, the data. And some people might find it dry. I find it quite fascinating, and once you know the data, you really empower with everything. So thank you very much for that and describing it so well for us. Great. So now we're going to move on to our final main stage event, and that is with Nimisha and myself, and this will be on the hiring and applying side. And I'm sure there's some people out there watching this or will be watching this. This is a recorded event, so I'm sure people will be interested to see this in the future as well. Where we touch on kind of perhaps the hidden aspects behind the scenes. How do you get great people into these positions? How do we get great people like Izzy and Nimisha and Ted and Tiago into our companies? And yeah, let's start. And I will introduce. Well, I think Nimisha is going to introduce herself.
Thank you, Rupert. And thanks everyone for staying with us for, I think it's nearly been 2 hours, right? But yeah, afternoon. I'm Nimisha Bowen, and I'm the head of experience design at Abcam, which is a global life science company headquartered in Cambridge. And as you heard in earlier talks, more and more companies are investing in e-commerce personalization, and Abcam is no exception. My background is in marketing automation and sales in developing markets, and prior to leading the experience design team at Abcam. So I'm looking to really take my learnings from my experience in understanding different consumer markets and developing personalization at scale and applying that to the e-commerce journey. And to do that, I really needed to build up my team. And I've recently worked closely with Rupert and Global M to make that a reality.
Great, thank you. Yeah, thanks a lot for that introduction, Nimisha. I think it's important to kind of start by asking you kind of how how does the experience design hiring process look like to you from your perspective?
Yes, so I started the hiring process back when we were in full lockdown back in May. So it was quite a strange time to be recruiting, but actually, because of all the changes of different people's experiences and their situations, I actually had a lot of really great conversations with lots of really fantastic candidates. So it was a pleasure to be interviewing all the people that I did. But how it really started, I started by sharing what I was looking for in candidates with Rupert and the team, describing what roles they would be doing, what kind of experience they needed to have to be successful into their role. And then we translated this into skills that someone would write into their CV or put on their LinkedIn profile. And some of those skills would be experience in specific systems, just so that people get up to speed quicker. And others would be being able to understand and analyze data. And other skills were about experience in customer-facing marketing and other marketing experience. And a big part of it was being able to get into the mindset of a customer and understand the meaning of data. And those two together were really crucial skills that made someone stand out for the roles in my team. So if you're looking to get into this field, make sure you kind of make these points stand out on your LinkedIn profile or CV, because we can't find you unless you don't help yourself to be found. Izzy, in any of your recruiting, were there any other skills that you looked for?
I have recently started to ask different questions with recruiting, mostly because the way we work now are changing. And to me, it's like, as you mentioned, some skills are just not available there, as people don't really make an effort to put them, or maybe they don't consider them important, or they're just kind of accepted to be just there. For example, as I see my teams going more into distributed working, we work across different time zones, we work across completely different projects, communication is more and more important. And we did speak and touch upon that at the beginning, where it's no longer kind of quick chat, face-to-face, turn around, jot a note, drop a very quick Slack message. It's a lot about completely different challenges. For example, I need to be able to support engineering, product, and design that kind of change shifts, right? When the Vietnam team is working and the UK team is still about waking up. right? As the Vietnam phases out, we come in. And so you need to have a clear kind of handover, and communication is more important than ever, especially writing clearly, being able to express yourself with clarity, and with focus as well. And so to me, I'm starting to look for these, and it's very hard to find these as people are not putting them on profiles, right? How often do you see someone, oh, a great communicator, and what does that actually mean? For us, just being able to use the language well to express where you are so that the next person can pick up the work and know exactly what you've done, and then therefore use your work to start theirs, is really, really important.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's a good communicator meant something different before COVID,
Right.
the lockdown and quarantine, than it does afterwards. And trying to separate what people actually mean by that statement is quite a challenge for hiring managers. Rupert, do you want to talk about how you went about searching for candidates and those initial conversations you had with them?
Yeah, sure. So for recruiting active and passive candidates, so we're all using LinkedIn, recruiter technology, hiring managers, recruiters, talent teams. So candidates need to make their brand searchable on this platform. That's absolutely essential now. And so it's important that to be searchable, obviously you have a great profile photo. People are going to remember you by. I've worked with hiring managers that have asked for the photo to be given in a candidate hiring meeting, so that you just can remember that person in their mind. So that's important. Your title, your brief personal synopsis needs to capture my attention, along with your key skills, the ones I want for this product, marketing, design, or tech position. So some people will put their key tech skills at the bottom of the page, the LinkedIn page, under key skills, and they won't put them in the main body of text. So this makes me think, as a member of a hiring team, that you don't really prize this skill, and you don't really have much experience in it. So my advice to anyone is to repeat your key skills actually within the main body, so within your actual experiences. Because that means that I have a lot more confidence that you have actually got those skills, and it's not that just you put it in for me to find it through a good Boolean search, which we obviously use as recruiters. So yeah, definitely that. We reach out to candidates in a similar way to reaching out to customers now.
Rupert, can I ask you
Yeah, sure.
a question that might pertain to this? Sure. How, as a candidate, or even as a company, there's a learning that I got from hotel bookings. It was an interesting learning, and it was showing negative selling points. So what the catch is about the product actually increased the conversions in the just uplifting channel. Meaning, when people are looking at a certain hotel that was rated 3 stars or 3 from customer rating, once people knew why the hotel was not perfect, we actually got more bookings. If they know, okay, it's a noisy hotel, people who are fine with noise booked it. As a company or a candidate, how do you communicate what your catch is?
Yeah, exactly. And this takes us back. I mean, we'll talk a bit more about how I see the candidate and customer experience being very much the same and having to be the same these days. But yeah, you obviously everything is out there on review sites, and you can't escape the negative aspects. But if you are a company that really wants to be seen as being transparent and honest, then you put those negative things out, but in obviously the best way that you can, so that you're not seen to be hiding anything. So what I would say what companies could perhaps do is choose some things that you feel that you could improve upon as a company. What are the things you don't have that you might think that candidate wants? And to do that, we can do a lot of research behind the scenes. We can do a lot of kind of polls on what candidates will want and what employees want. But a lot of the time, it's just speaking to the candidate and saying, well, look, we might not have this, and actually we don't have this, but what is that going to affect you in any way? What do you want to see, so that we can make improvements and maybe adjust to that in the future? So yeah, exactly. Like with that honesty to customers, exactly the same for candidates at the moment. Exactly. So, yeah, I mean, today's candidate experience, as I said, is very similar to the customer journey, involving a lot of segmentation and automation to strategically and effectively target candidate audiences, streamline processes, reduce time, and personalize the candidate experience from reach out through to onboarding and beyond. So that the modern candidate is used to and indeed expects an amazing digital experience. They get this every day or week from their journeys through Amazon and Facebook. The new customer who is not onboarded through e-commerce touchpoints and channeled in the right way will not stay as a loyal repeat customer for long. And similarly, if the candidate is not onboarded in the right way, then he or she will not stay with the company for very long. And this has been supported by a lot of research. And I think one main thing to come out of research is that organizations that invest in effective onboarding retain 50% more of new hires than their competitors do. So this is what defines the talent brand of a company, the hiring and recruiting process. But it also, if a company's corporate and product branding does not align with the values and ideals of the candidate, then he or she will think twice about applying and joining a company. So yeah, everything, the brand as a whole, it has to be separated, but they all have to really support one another. Today, we have a fourth branding to consider, known as the event brand. If a company does not represent themselves at an event in a way that aligns with the expectations of the target customer or candidate group, then a company could very much lose out on the best candidate. So we have a lot of touch points to consider now across a variety of digital channels. And today's hiring managers and talent teams must work closely with digital marketing and branding teams, as well as product teams, to remain competitive. Right now, we don't really see that overlap, but gradually we have to, because we call it a war for talent. I don't like to use that term, but it is, there is not enough talent to go around at the moment, because there's so many technologies moving so rapidly and so fast. But I can see that a lot more integration with teams, a lot more of this cross collaboration. Before you would see the talent team just sitting on its own. It's HR. We don't really want, they do this mystical black magic. We don't really know much about it. But now it's going to be very much interactive. We're going to cross check our data. We're going to use very similar platforms as well. So recruiters, talent branding, and hiring managers will learn to use marketing platforms like MailChimp and use the power of short, segmented, and personalized video to target candidates, like marketeers have been doing for a while now with customers. And this is even more relevant today, post-COVID-19 or during the COVID-19, when interviewing and onboarding is all done 100% remotely, and companies cannot rely on marketing themselves with a swanky office with games rooms and rooftop bar or terrace. It's all digital. And the future employee will have their working life mostly within the cloud. So we must start marketing our cloud environments from the beginning to candidates. We must advertise clearly what this environment will look like to them. Does it include Slack or Microsoft Teams, Zoom or Google Meet? And so, yeah, there's companies already forcing us to look more into that. There's a company called Beamery out there that is a marketing platform for talent. It's an employer marketing platform. It caters at the moment very much for kind of more enterprise level companies. But you don't necessarily need to use big platforms like that to market to your talent or future talent that comes through. You can use, as I said, MailChimp. You just need to be able to grab some important information like emails through, say, for example, through some capture forms that you would send out. And as long as that's being brought into some CRM that your marketing team are already using, like MailChimp or HubSpot, you've got that, you've got that data already. And as long as you have some opt-in type of information within that form that you're capturing that information, then it should be GDPR compliant. You might have a double opt-in, as MailChimp often asks for. And so you can start looking at all of that data, working perhaps with the marketing team to look at how you might segment these populations of talent for the future, and then look at kind of new ways that you would outreach to them. It doesn't have to be an email, but it definitely needs to be this very, very much marketing focused strategy for the future of recruitment.
Rupert, how important do you think a company's mission is? Because it's one thing that Facebook is very, very strong on, is really drilling the mission into you on onboarding. There's loads of propaganda posters around the place, and then they check up. So in the Pulse survey, one of the questions is how important is the mission to you, and they can track that over time and see where people are up to.
Yeah, mission is so important. As I mentioned before, it's you have to have this corporate brand image, and if it doesn't align with, say, your target audience out there, then you're not going to draw the right people. But you can segment this. You might have several missions. You might have more missions focused on the product level. You might have more missions focused more on the enterprise size level. You could have like a mini missions within your teams and companies. So that's why I said, it's very important to be able to collect all of this information, use some kind of CRM to then direct to your right target audiences. So I would definitely look at the mission as being important. I think from my experience, there seems to be a slight gender bias towards, I think females really like the mission. I mean, I think it's across the board, but if you have a really great mission that has a real emotional leaning, then you can attract, if you're a company that wants to attract more females to the company, I think that you can really do that through much more through the mission and through what you're doing. And if you're a company that's really making a real difference, maybe you're a tech company that's working with, say, lots of genetic data, and you're trying to eradicate diseases based on all this data, then you need to be able to really sell that, because that's something that is life-changing, and you can really get behind. But even Facebook, it'll have its ways. There are things in that mission that will attract certain audiences. We just need to look at it and look at it very closely, say with your marketing teams or your PR teams.
I also wanted to just so in the chat, Isla's asked just about when you mentioned having the photos in hiring meetings, just about whether that can introduce bias.
Absolutely, and this is something that I worry about when hiring managers do that. I think I would always advise against it, but I believe that that some will want to have that human connection with you, and you can't argue with that. I would always advise, look, yes, the picture of somebody remains in your mind, and it's great to see somebody that looks happy, or someone that looks like they've made an effort in their pictures, but it has to be aligned with also their technical skills and everything else. So I'll always make an effort that there should be no bias, and in my review meetings I will ensure to do that. But I think it's the way that we're going, and there's no way of hiding the fact that when you're giving, or a CV is given to a hiring manager, the first thing that hiring manager will do is check out your LinkedIn page. Doesn't matter, you've got your CV. That's not enough anymore. Your GitHub or whatever, wherever you have an influence, that person the hiring manager will want to see what you look like in that situation, or how you appear in that situation. A profile without an image in LinkedIn, well, that's fair enough, but it's definitely not going to capture my imagination or in my memory. And I question why someone hasn't put, what are they hiding? What are they hiding if they don't put their image in, or some kind of image of themselves into their LinkedIn profile? I'm not sure if anybody disagrees with that, but that's kind of my take on it.
I don't completely. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't completely disagree. I consciously, because I knew that there's unconscious bias in all of us. We can't control it. That's what it is. I'm aware that I will have it. So when I was doing the first initial vetting of candidates, I would mainly just look at how you presented yourself on your CV, and how Rupert then presented you to me. So they were like the two ways of getting the information across about the person. Doesn't mean I didn't then go look at people's LinkedIn profiles, but I kind of did that judgment after I decided who I was going to follow up with, because I wanted to kind of remove those inherent biases that maybe there, may not be there, but I wanted to make sure that I kind of prepared myself for that, because it's really important. I mean, I'm from an ethnic minority as well, so I wanted to make sure that I was making sure that that I was kind of building my team from a way that I would hope that other people would build theirs.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, you can't escape the fact that you've got a LinkedIn profile out there, and inevitably the team will look at that, and also perhaps even your Facebook profile. But we need to be careful of balancing everything now, everything in this world. And I think some of the stuff that I've recommended is taking even names off CVs sometimes. It obviously depends on the teams you're working with, but I don't think a name needs to be on a CV at all. And I don't even think that a location needs to be. I think maybe you need to put down if you require a visa. I mean, that sometimes is important for a company. But to take off anything like that is personal, and then just leave your technical things on your CV. The CVs that I really like are the ones that are really geared around the skills. So if nowadays, if you're applying for a UX position or a design position or a marketing position, I want to see that it is a really nice design. I'm not worried about where you're from, what you look like. I want to see that you've actually made an effort in the design, the structure of your CV, because that tells me you're very, very conscious about building up a product, for example, or how a product looks. And so the templates that you're using now are very important. So the ones that I really like are, you've got your skills on the right-hand side in the right margin, and it's all on one page. And so that I'm looking in terms of your experience, and as a hiring manager, I want to know what you've done in each of the experiences, but I can go along to the right-hand side and I can see that you've got, I don't know, if you're an engineer, you've got Java or Python. If you're, I don't know, if you're a designer, I want to see what type of UX, UI platforms you've worked on, what type of tech you've used for that. And it's going to be something that I don't need to even spend a lot of time on. We've got to think about, we're talking about experience design, but we talk about experience design that the candidate would give the hiring manager. It needs to be effortless, it needs to be delightful, and it needs to be actually amazing.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, really looking for me, if you're wanting to get into experience design and you've got your first engagement with your hiring manager is going to be, what experience are you going to give them when they're trying to work out if you're the right person to hire or not? And if you can give me a great experience where I can work out who you are, what you're interested in, what your passions are, and kind of what your skill set is, I'm not going to have to talk to Rupert and the hiring manager team for a very long time about whether I want to take you through to an interview. I want to have high expectations of you from the interview, but I should do, because you're showcasing some really great skills already. And I think you'd probably be a good fit for the team, because you're thinking about that whole experience in your personal life as well as what your professional life would be as well. So I think really, really tailoring your CV to the job role that you're applying for is so crucial, even though everyone says it, but it's crucial for, particularly, I would say, this field.
Yeah, absolutely. May try and make it as effortless as possible for the person reading it and the person viewing it. And we talked about earlier about the importance of communication, as he said that, and I know Namishi said that. So not just the technical skills, the comm skills on your CV. Sooner or later, we will get on a video call. Everyone has a video call now. So inevitably, you're going to have to show your face in front of the camera. So I think that's why there might be a leaning now towards, let's see this person straight away. Let's try and get this human idea about what they're like from them. But yeah, I agree with it, Isla, in the chat. It isn't great for non-biased recruitment, but you can also understand what the thinking behind of that to try and get that. Because if you're a hiring manager that's receiving hundreds and hundreds of applications, you need for them to stand out in some way, and this is what we're battling against now with non-biased recruitment.
I think Izzy had a question.
I actually had two, but the first one was very much, I know you guys talked about the CVs and what you like and what you kind of are looking for, but these days, I mean, we have a younger and younger kind of working forces coming through with a brand new way of communicating, right? Like, and I almost feel like CVs are not just becoming more visual, but there also is there a danger of them phasing out in favor of different ways of promoting yourself. mean, there's so many examples out there, people getting jobs through social media, through making a great video that's gone viral. There's just so many examples of that. How do you guys feel about this new way of
I think I would
like?
I think I would really encourage it, and what I can see now is with the rise of technology, you've got Video My Job out there, which is a great platform which enables from the hiring team, they will put themselves out, and they could select an amazing person from a LinkedIn profile, and they will create something just personalized for that individual. Say, for example, Namisha, I would talk to Namisha, I'd use her name, I'd say, look, Namisha, we found your CV, and we found you online, and you seem a perfect fit for us, and we know you have done this, and this is why you'd fit in amazing. But because I'm talking to you in front of the camera, it's a lot more powerful, it's a lot more engaging, and that's why I think we need to think about similar ways that we're already doing that a lot with customers. If we can start doing that with candidates, then that's the way forward. But if we turn that around, yes, candidates can be doing it as well. Candidates have already started having video profiles for themselves. And I think Generation Z are going to be doing that a lot more. They're going to want to do that. They're going to want to have 30 seconds or 60 seconds video. We're becoming a lot more comfortable in front of the camera, all of us. So I think maybe a few years ago, we wouldn't have wanted to really do that because we don't want to expose ourselves quickly. And we think that perhaps we're going to be rejected based on appearance, which shouldn't be. But the quicker we get ourselves talking about our experiences, then we're going to capture the imagination of an employer a lot more. And also shows a lot of courage that you can do that. And I think if a candidate sent me a video talking to me briefly, I don't say any more than 30 seconds or 60 seconds about themselves and why they would be suitable for that position, I'd give it so much kudos because there's so much effort gone into that. And effort is what I look for, or what we would look for, what a hiring team would look for.
Absolutely.
Rupert,
okay.
I just wanted to ask about this producing video and all that. I'm seeing that, but since you work in the area, you might be seeing that as well. Do you see a lot more media being used in recruitment that's just popping up in an organic way, such as you're in touch with a candidate on WhatsApp, suddenly videos are flying. Just because that's how people are talking on WhatsApp now. They're making a video. So it's not something that people really planned. I'm going to do this to boost my career profile, whatever. You just started doing it. Are you seeing things like that in the wild?
I think so. Well, you mentioned earlier about TikTok. I mean, this is a quick, engaging platform that enables, quick engagement. I think you mentioned something. I think there was a platform earlier that enabled very short segments. I'm not sure if what that was. I think it was something like, what was it?
It was TikTok, yeah.
But there was a platform before that did smaller segments of videos. So you mentioned that one as well. But and I think it was bought by Twitter. But that type of platform that shows the talent very quickly to somebody.
Vine, sorry, that was Vine.
Vine, that's it. Yes, Vine. And so something like that shows talent really, really quickly, because we're living in a world where we don't want to think, we don't really want to spend too much time doing things. And I think we're doing stuff, as you said, more on the fly. It doesn't have to be. I think this is the same for companies that are putting out these really amazing corporate videos that have a lot of production qualities, and they're not necessarily going to attract perhaps even the right audience, especially for talent. It may be that we want to see more of a kind of rough around the edges view of what you're doing. It has to obviously have good sound, but it doesn't have to be entirely steady. It doesn't have to be entirely like watching a film or something. And so I think media is already doing that, and inevitably we're going to go towards that way of presenting ourselves to companies. Lisa, do you have any?
So we've got a couple of minutes left, but as I mentioned earlier, I've been doing lots and lots of interviews for various roles in my team, and I thought it would be useful for people to hear what I thought were kind of the things to not do and things to do. So I maybe might run over a couple of minutes.
Yeah, no worries. Go ahead.
Useful information. But basically, with this new world that we live in, you're not going to get away from having a video call. All of my initial interviews were on video, and remember that 90% of communication is non-verbal. So making sure that you have good internet signal, so all of that non-verbal communication can actually come through. And I tried to ignore the signal when I did have a bad connectivity issues with customers. But it's really hard to then understand what the candidate's trying to say, and it's really not hard these days to test it. Go to a friend's house if you know that your internet signal is bad, or find a cafe where you know that there's good Wi-Fi. Maybe difficult with the cafe at the moment, but I can only really judge you on what I can see and hear. And if the signal cuts out for most of that, you've really just put yourself on the back foot for absolutely no reason. Secondly, practice logging into the video chat. It might be a platform that you've never used before, and whatever system it may be, you can just click for 5 minutes, check if you can log in. The number of interviews that I had where we spent the first 5-10 minutes trying to coordinate getting sound on, getting someone on, or trying to find someone's phone number. You've just lost 5 minutes of showing me how great you are, and I've missed on finding out why you're great too. And it just shows that you're not prepared, and it only really takes you a minute to do. So honestly, just do it. So two tips on videos.
Thanks, Namisha. Yeah, we seem to be very focused on video, and I think rightfully so. That's the way the world is moving. But we'll discuss more with Namisha and myself. If anyone's a bit more interested in kind of the way that companies are like Abcam, like other companies are actually presenting stages and why they're important, and the actual specific stages that are now put in place for experienced design teams and product teams, then we can discuss that more in depth in our small group sessions which follow this. Well, thanks everyone for joining, and hopefully I'll let you go off to your small group sessions so you can meet with some of the people fortunate enough to get into them, and anyone else, then the networking is now open. And I believe the session will open first session will open in about 2 minutes. So yeah, try to get into one of those. In the networking, it's going to be randomly there to set you up on a one-to-one. So enjoy that. You never know who's going to pop up on your screen for you to talk to. So be brave, and sometimes the best friendships and the best connections can be made in that way. Thank you very much to the roundtable, and you guys can hop off.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Let's see. Click on sessions, right?
Yeah, Tiago, that's it. So anyone left here at the moment, thank you so much for attending. We can't, we're not doing this event just to talk to ourselves. Thank you for coming in, and thank you for putting some quite interesting questions in the chat section. I hope you've enjoyed the Hopin platform. It's the first, it's a really amazing platform, I think. I don't think I've experienced anything like it before. I don't think maybe some of you guys will have done either. Please now feel free to go to the group sessions, the networking, or the expo booth, access from the left-hand side of your Hopin dashboard. Thank you once again for attending, and I'll see you very soon, I hope. So take care. Thank you.